So noted. Commissioner Whitlatch is here. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Planning Commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for planning consideration. So that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the Planning Commission may be limited at the discretion of the chair. Note, in order to be considered by the Planning Commission, testimony on public hearing items must be given at the time scheduled for the public hearing. At all times, please use the microphone. State your name and address for the record. And also, please, if you have a cell phone this morning, would you please put it on mute or turn it off for the courtesy of others. Thank you. Item 3 of our agenda this morning is approval of the minutes. Approve the minutes from May 25th, 2011. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Abstain.
Yes.
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 Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, consent calendar. I do not see any items, and Mr. Kimball?
Chairman, that's correct. We're currently in a transition.
Hasn't that been changed over at the admin?
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, public hearings, and these are timed items. And I'm going to make a comment before we start here. We've had some technical difficulties this particular session with getting information to the commissioners, and I suspect from the emails that I saw last evening, some of us have not seen all the information. So, Commissioner Diaz, do you have a comment?
I'm trying to get the tech aide here, assistance.
Okay. Okay. So if any of my fellow commissioners have any comments relative to this, you can certainly speak to those comments at this moment.
I, for one, you can send me digital information, but I'm going to require that I have the paper documents sent to me at least Monday, the Thursday before our meeting, because this is not working, and so it's unacceptable. So I want paper.
One of the problems we had is some of the documents were extremely large. Last evening, I opened one that's 400 pages. It's impossible to read 400 pages at 11:35 at night. So we're going to have to get the process advanced ahead of the meeting date by, I would say, at least 4 to 5 business days for us to have a chance at reviewing this data. Now, I don't mind looking at the data on a memory stick or looking at it online, but I need that information sooner than 1 or 2 or 3 days before the session.
Mr. Chairman, could we have either you or Mr. Webb explain to the people in the audience what we've been attempting to do
Certainly.
the last few months?
What we've been attempting to do for the public is convert or transition over to a paperless process, which is good, and we all want that. And that means that we're receiving files to our computers, our personal computers and or our county computers at least 4 or 5 days in advance. Commissioner Diaz, you want to hold that up? That is the size of documents that are coming. And in some cases, some of the applicants have multiple documents of that magnitude. That's good. If it takes that kind of information to explain the problem or the application or the solution, we're all for that. But the problem for the commission is it's hard for us to digest all that information in a short period of time. So we agreed to a transition with a parallel process, which was paperwork. We sort of decided we were going to jump off the cliff and go totally paperless, and it's been a little bit of a problem. I don't think it's a major problem, but for this particular session, with one of the agenda items being as large as it is, or was, or is, we had a problem in trying to read all that information in a timely manner.
Well, I think another way of understanding the problem that we're up against, I know Amazon.com and places like that would love us all to read everything on Kindles. But when you think about it, it's really difficult to read multiple pages on your computer, page after page, especially for people who aren't used to doing that. So I don't mind having the opportunity to print some of it out on my own printer, and I certainly want to save the county the postage of mailing the big packages, and I could print out key pages on my own printer. But in order to do that, we really have to have the material a lot sooner. And I think that's the whole key to this, because it's just, as much as we'd like to read, the majority of it online, it's really not conducive to really digesting the material and getting ready for a commission meeting. So with that noted, I think we can make some changes and make this work.
Yeah, and I think it's all for the good. It's a positive move. It just ended up being a blip for this particular session. So with that being said, council, question. Some of us have not seen all the information on all of these particular applications. Would you recommend that we continue this session to a date certain out, for instance, maybe 2 or 3 days, business days from now?
Well, I guess it depends on the comfort of the commissioners. If you want, you
Could we hear the information?
and then see if, your concerns are addressed.
Because we want to do our due diligence. We want to make sure that we perform our role in this process correctly. And so what I would suggest then from your comments is that we hear each of these particular applications this morning, and we'll determine case by case whether we move to continue or not. Fair enough?
Sounds like a good idea. It's up to the discretion of the
There's
commission.
only one big one, Wayne.
I understand that.
And that's it.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment? Could we just take like a straw poll of who might be available, say, Friday morning if we need to continue over, if we have to come back in a couple of days? That's what you're suggesting, right? To finish the hearing?
That or next Monday or Tuesday.
Or do we not have to
Maybe there's still
publicize?
some sizable amount of information I haven't read.
Well, I understand that, Mr. Chair, but do we not have to publicize that as a public hearing? And we
Probably
can't-
so.
We just can't show up here in 2 or 3 days.
Definitely.
And
My-
Tuesday, they're busy.
My suggestion, Mr.
Counsel?
Chair. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Apologize for interrupting. If you wanted to continue the public hearings for a couple days without the re-noticing, you would open them now and then continue to whatever date you want. Back to work.
I know, we all have busy, for you folks who don't
If
know.
we
we're-
open it.
We don't really get paid for this job. We're all outside business people, and we have to take out of our business day to come do this. And so I guess what I was asking was, for instance, I Friday works for me, okay? But maybe it doesn't work for Rod, who publishes the newspaper. So I'm just trying to get an idea, 2 or 3 days, if that's feasible, to get 5 or 7 of us back here.
Well,
I'm asking.
as was suggested here, that we have to open each of these in order to continue them. We can't just
I'm not asking to continue, but I just want to see if it's possible that we can do that before we start.
Well, let me take a
go
straw
ahead.
poll here. How many can be here next Monday or Tuesday? I think we need a little extra time. Today is Wednesday. I don't know if we can digest all this information by Friday.
Well, most Tuesdays, they're busy. And
Well, Mr. Chair, are we going to ask the public to come back again Monday or Tuesday?
They'll have to.
My recommendation would be that we go ahead and have the meeting, because it has been published, and we listen to all the testimony that we can, with the understanding that we aren't going to take an action today. We're going to have to continue this for 2 weeks, and then we come back. Out in 2 weeks, we'll have had time to review this thing, and then we can act upon it at that time.
I agree with you there.
And I understand that the applicant could lose his funding if we wait 2 weeks. So I'm sympathetic as a developer that, you know,
But we don't know
this
that
is
till
an
we hear
inconvenience
that.
for me to come back.
Do we know that?
We don't know that, do we?
I heard from Mr. Kimball.
Let's see what the issues are.
All right. Okay,
Okay.
fair enough.
Fair enough.
Let's move on to item 5A. This is a public hearing. Frank and Rosalinda Wall, Forrester Weber and Associates, tentative parcel map, lot line adjustment to allow the creation of a 2.73 acre home site parcel through a lot line adjustment and the division of the adjusted plus 160 acre parcel into 6 agricultural parcels of at least 20 plus acres each in the AE 20 exclusive agricultural 20 acre minimum zone. The site is located on the northeast corner of Avenue 416 and Road 168 east of Arosa. And our contact this morning is Dana Metlin. Good morning, Dana.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Can you
This-
suffer through all of that you just heard?
Yes,
All right.
thank you. The project this morning is a division of 163 acres into 7 parcels. One of those parcels would be a home site parcel, and the other would be 6 agricultural parcels, which are termed agricultural because they are 20 acres or more in size. The project would entail 2 separate processes. The first process would be the lot line adjustment, and here is the vicinity map. I apologize for not having a coordinated PowerPoint. The property currently consists of 2 separate parcels, and if I move forward, we can see here, if I can, this is one parcel here, combining that one parcel, and the second parcel is here. And the first process is the lot line adjustment, which would adjust this property line right here to surround this parcel and create a home site, which is here. The property currently consists of 2 separate APNs on this first parcel. Originally, parcel 1 was created in 1989, and the one APN was created as a life estate, and it should have been eliminated in 1993 when the occupant died. However, that did not occur, so that parcel has 2 separate APNs, although it is one parcel. The applicant has requested an exception, to Section 701-1355 of the subdivision ordinance pertaining to a lot with extreme variance in shape with regard to the home site parcel. There are special circumstances which affect the property design for the property. The proposed property lines for the home site parcel would follow the existing terrain. The north line would follow the center line of the existing road, and the south line would follow the center line of an existing ditch. The site contains 2 existing residences. Special use permit PSP 08097AA was filed concurrently with this project to provide for the effect of increased density caused by the creation of the home site parcel, and that project would be approved by the director after approval of this project. So after the lot line is created, then that would leave us with just one large parcel here. And that parcel is then going to be created or divided into 6 agricultural parcels. The project is an agricultural parcel map under the terms and conditions of Section 66426 of the State Map Act. which allows the creation of more than 5 parcels through the parcel map process when each parcel being created by the division has a gross area of at least 20 acres or more, and has access to a maintained public road. The adjusted parcel would consist of 160 acres, and the 6 parcels created would be parcel 1 is 42.66 acres, parcel 2 would be 30.24 acres, parcel 3 is 27.26 acres, parcel 4 is 21.33 acres, parcel 5, 21.44 acres, and parcel 6, 28.08 acres. Proposed parcels 2, 3, 4, and 5 would have direct access to Avenue 416, which is down here. And proposed parcels 5, 6, and 7 would have direct access to Road 168, which is here. Proposed parcel 1 would have indirect access to Road 168 via an 18-foot wide access easement across this area here. Conditions of approval would require the access easement to be improved to a 1-parcel standard. The parcels would be for agricultural use. Parcels 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 contain orchards, and parcel 2 contains a large mound that is utilized for grazing purposes and a residence with a sorted outbuilding. The applicant has requested 2 exceptions from the subdivision ordinance, section 701-2230A and C, pertaining to 1, the improvement standards for easements for vehicular access, and 2, the maximum length of an easement for non-mountainous parcels over 10 acres being 800 feet. The exceptions are appropriate for the proposal. The proposal is in compliance with the Tulare County General Plan and all applicable elements. A waiver of the geohydro was requested and waived pursuant to the Health Services Division. The entire 163-acre site is under Williamson Act, Land Conservation Contract number 4471, Preserve number 1353. A partial notice of non-renewal would be required as a condition of approval for parcel 2 and 7 prior to the recording of the final map. A new contract containing new legal descriptions and new language would be required prior to the recording of the final map. An agricultural preserve checklist was prepared for the project, and it was determined that the proposed division of land would be in compliance with agricultural preserve requirements. And all of the surrounding properties are zoned AE 20 and contain agricultural and residential uses. An environmental impacts checklist was prepared for the project and concluded that the proposed project could not have a significant effect on the environment. No potentially significant impacts were identified that cannot be reduced to a level less than significant by application and enforcement of state standards and/or county ordinances and/or standard conditions of approval. And staff is recommending the action as noted. Move to certify the negative declaration, move to approve the exceptions, and move to conditionally approve the tentative parcel map and lot line adjustment. And that concludes staff's report. Do you have any questions?
Hey, Dana?
Could I ask?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know engineers could draw anything but straight lines, so I'm amazed at the... So is the reason this one parcel, is that a hill, or is that a canal, or what is that?
Well,
Parcel, okay, it's on the back here.
this one here,
No, that just kind of...
this is the home site parcel.
That must be a ditch or something that follows the southern boundary, is that what that
It
is?
is.
Okay. But then the parcel number looks like 2. Is that
This parcel is the one that contains a mound. It is
Okay.
fairly large.
So it's not under cultivation?
No, it's pasture. And this, oops, I'm sorry.
Burial mound.
And this is where the residence is, down
And so it created a jog in the legal, around that, something that pokes out into it? Is that what that's all about?
Well, this is the parcel here.
Okay. But it's not a straight line when you go there, and then all of a sudden it turns.
Oh, right here. Well, Mr. Weber, the engineer, is present, and So you're asking about,
Yeah, I'm just kind of saying this.
What is that?
So the,
Well, let's get the engineer
okay, that's
to
all.
make a comment on that.
so this may correspond to this,
Like a building.
Thank you.
thing. Any other questions?
Any other comments or questions from the commission? This is a public hearing, and I'm going to open the public testimony at this time. Are there any, let's see a show of hands, any proponents or opponents to this project? Okay, would you please come up and state your name and address? Good morning. Pardon?
That's part of the hill where the crooked line is concerned with. The bank comes out, cut back and follows the road.
Can everyone hear him back there?
I don't think it's on.
Could we get the volume up a little bit?
Not on.
Excuse me. One moment.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Anyway, that line follows a cut bank. There's a road that comes along there. There's no structure there. I have a little bit better aerial than the reduced one that you have, if you'd like to see it.
Could you please state your name and address
Oh,
again?
yeah. Fred Weber, Forrester Weber and Associates, 1620 West Mineral King.
Thank you very much.
We do concur with staff's report on this and the conditions that they've set in here, and we have no problems with it at this time. Some of you might recognize this. This is the project that was always on display during the time we were doing the home site parcels. The little triangle shape is the one that was pretty dominant as far as the display. I'll try to answer any other questions you guys may have.
Any questions?
Just amazed that you know how to draw something besides a straight line.
We can do that if we have to, Bill.
Imagine the legal description on that. Whoa,
There isn't one. There's a final map.
really? Yeah, that's good.
Anything else?
This is a situation here too, Maria, for, if we could get on the wireless here, we could go on Google Earth right here and really look at this too. So this is very helpful to have that.
And you don't need that back, right?
I want it back.
Want it back? Well, it's a problem, because once it comes to us,
I got it from the planning department.
oh,
I'm sure you can get one.
okay. Do we have one, Dana, like that? But you can get one for the file, so Mr. Weber can have his back? Okay.
I got that one from Tim.
It's typically a policy of the planning commission, once that we look at it, it has to go into the file, so,
I'll remember that and won't give you one from now on.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
I'll give you the next one for free.
Any other questions? All right, any other comments from the public? All right, I'll close the public testimony at this point, and we'll get a quick summation here of the action items that we are looking at to take. Item A. Commissioners, any comments on item A? Can I hear a motion to approve item A to certify the negative deck?
I'll make that motion to certify the negative deck.
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item B, move to approve the exceptions from the provision 7-01, 1355. Do I have a motion to approve those exceptions?
Move we approve those exceptions.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item C, move to conditionally approve tentative parcel map line adjustment, BPM 082/PLA. Do I have a motion to conditionally approve?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Thank you. All right, what I'm going to do here, and Commissioners, please comment on this. I want to move to item 5C. Let's see if we can disperse with this one, and then we'll move back to item 5B, because I suspect 5B is a little more involved. So let's move on to... All right.
Got 3 minutes.
Does anyone need a bio break?
Yeah.
We'll take a break for 3.5, 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Be back at 9:32. And as I stated previously, I'm going to move on to item 5C, and we'll come back to 5B. I think we can get through 5C relatively pain-free here. PPM 09-004, Albert Ortega, J. Frank Gomez, tentative parcel map for a division of 42,000 plus square feet into 3 parcels. Parcel 1 equals 7,800 plus square feet, parcel 2 equals 10,400 plus square feet, and parcel 3 equals 23,800 plus square feet in the R3 multiple family zone. The site is located on the south side of Avenue 413, approximately 370 feet west of State Route 63, within the community of Orosi. And our contact this morning, Chuck, I'm Czech, but you're probably Polish.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Przybylski.
Przybylski.
All right, that's close.
Good enough.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Chuck Przybylski from Tulare County Resource Management Agency, the Planning Division. As you mentioned before you is a tentative parcel map, PPM 09004, brought by Albert Ortega. It is a division of land in the R3 zone of approximately an acre into 3 parcels, one of 7,800 square feet, another 10,400 square feet, and the third at 23,800 square feet. All these square footage are compatible with the R3 zone. The applicant is requesting an exception to the easement on the driveway, which I'll show in just 1 minute. The applicant is requesting a 4-foot exception. Engineering requires an 18-foot easement on the property, and there's only enough room for a 14-foot easement. And the engineering division does recognize that there is a building on the site, so the easement cannot be 18 feet, and therefore recognizes this circumstance and recommends a 14-foot wide easement on the property. Looking at this map here, it shows Cutler Anarosi in the center and of the site, and a close-up of the actual map. Here is parcel 1, that's 7,800 square feet. There's an existing home that meets all the setback requirements for the zone. On parcel 2, there's also an existing home which meets the setbacks for the requirement. Along this east side is the easement. That's going to be 14 feet, and the home actually abuts upon this 14-foot easement right here. That's why they're requesting the exception to that ordinance. Then parcel 3 is the remainder back here. Cutler Orosi, the Orosi Public Utility District has provided a will serve for the back parcel. However, it's only enough for 1 unit, so that will not be able to actually develop into a multiple family development. There was a person that actually called me from the community who was concerned about the road conditions of an apartment building going onto this particular area, and it would cause further deteriorations of an already deteriorated road system. However, as I mentioned, the apartment building will not be recommended at this site because of the limitations to the water and sewer. What I'm requesting is that the Planning Commission accept the categorical exemption as appropriate. It is a negative or not a negative a categorical exemption. It could be considered an infill development also. Approve the exception to section 07012230, which is the easement exception, and approve the project in all conditions in the resolution. And that concludes my presentation.
Any comments from our commissioners?
No, I have a question. Straightforward.
Is the easement the only access to that parcel number 3?
That's correct.
To go back to that picture again, though.
This one?
Yeah,
This is the easement section right here.
getting to parcel 3.
That's correct.
And at this time, the only reason that the apartment building could not be permitted back there is because of the services?
That's correct.
But we're okaying a too small easement but we're not okaying it to parcel 3, right?
No, this easement does go to the parcel, the rear of the parcel.
Which is fine right now because there's no apartment building there.
Right.
But we're okaying the easement, so they could put an apartment building back there.
If the Rosie's, yes, if eventually you get enough water or sewer capacity, it's possible to put an apartment building back there. But the easement would still be, unless they get an easement or a portion of the easement from the adjacent property, because of the existing house, it would be that small. So the apartment building, if it goes before us, if it has problems, it would probably be going before your commission for approval.
And then we could adjust,
That's correct.
address that then.
Any other questions? Okay, Chuck, thank you. This is a public hearing, and at this time, I'll open the hearing to testimony. Are there any proponents or opponents to this project? Is the applicant here? Would anyone like to speak? All right, thank you very much. I'll close public testimony, and let's look at the summation again for action by the commission. Item 1, Planning Commission accept the categorical exemption as appropriate. Do I have a motion to accept?
I move we accept the categorical exception as appropriate.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes, but I'm going to be watching really close for that to be coming back.
Yes.
Thank you. The second item is approve the exception to Section 07-01-2230. Do I have a motion to accept that exception?
I move we accept that exception to Section 07-01-2230.
Or a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes, sorry. I can't hear you say Piliano. I don't know why. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 3, approve the project and all conditions in the resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Piliano,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
Thank you.
Question on item 5B, Council, that was set for 9:15. Item A was 9:15. I'm assuming we've just completed the 9:30 timing, so are we going to go to 9:45? Do we want another break, or do we want to move right in?
Move ahead.
Want to move ahead?
You can move ahead on it.
We'll move ahead. Item 5B, PSP 10-060/PSR, Pixley Biogas, LLC, Calgren Renewable Fuels, LLC, mitigated negative declaration and special use permit for development of a biogas facility on 2.75 acre portion of an 8 acre parcel for extraction of methane gas via an anaerobic manure digester by use by Calgren Renewable Fuels, facility located adjacent and to the south of the subject site in the PDM1 Planned Development Light Manufacturing Zone. The site is located on the south side of Avenue 120 between State Route 99 and Road 120 north of Pixley. And our contact this morning is Charlotte Brusuelis. Good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, Millis, Commissioners. For the audience, Charlotte Brusuelis, RMA Planning Staff. The item before you today is a special use permit request, as just stated. There will be a two-part presentation from staff this morning. I will be presenting a summary of the overall project, after which Mr. Mitchell, Dave Mitchell from Michael Brandman Associates, who prepared the environmental document, will be making comments in response to the comments that were received on the environmental document. And then staff will finish up the presentation on the project. Oops. The development, it's for the development of a biogas facility for extraction of methane gas via an anaerobic manure digester. The facility will be used to produce biogas via an aerobic digestion of manure feedstock from nearby dairies. The biogas produced will be used by the Calgren biorefinery facility located adjacent and to the south of the subject site. That process will reduce the plant consumption of natural gas. The subject site is located on the south side of Avenue 120 between State Route 199 and Road 120 north of Pixley. The subject site is zoned PDM1, which is Planned Development Light Manufacturing. Properties to the north, south, and east across SR State Route 99 and the railroad are zoned PDM1 as well. And property to the west of the site, west of Road 120, is zoned AE40. This is an aerial of the site. You can see that California Dairies is located, if I can get the arrow to work. I'm not sure. Is it the middle button or? Oh, okay. The California Dairies is located north of the subject site. The Calgren facility is located to the south. To the east is a combination across State Route 99 is a combination of agriculture, commercial, and rural residential development. And to the west of the subject site is agriculture. This is a wider aerial view of the subject site. You can see that the main portion of the Pixley area is located approximately, it's not quite 2 miles south of the subject site, which is located at this point. This is a copy of the general plan, or at least a portion of the general plan for the Pixley area. You can see that the subject site is located in the North Pixley specific plan area, at the northernmost portion of the area. The site is within the urban area development boundary of the unincorporated community of Pixley and within the North Pixley specific plan boundary. The land use designation is commercial industrial. The Pixley Biogas Center, this is a copy of the site plan. The Pixley Biogas Anaerobic Manure Digester Facility will consist of 5 principal structures or improvements. One will be the digester vessel. Second will be the mechanical building, also a holding tank, a transfer pit, and a storage slab. The project objectives, they were stated in your packet, but you may not have been able to obtain that information. So it's to provide renewable biogas for use as an existing biofuels, provide an alternative waste treatment method for dairy manure and other organic waste streams, assist dairies in managing nutrients by transporting manure off-site for digestion, comply with all water quality regulations as set by the California Water Board, comply with air quality regulations as set by the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution District, and ensure that safety and security criteria are met and that the new construction and the proposed project can be efficiently operated. Components of the project consist of construction of the anaerobic digester on a 2.7-acre portion of an 8-acre parcel, construction of 2 pipelines to transport the manure from 4J Farms Dairy to the digester and to return the wastewater from the digestion process to 4J Farms for eventual application on the property. And use of the biogas produced by the digester which will be piped to the adjacent Calgren Renewable Energy Fuels facilities and used to produce steam in a boiler. The biogas will reduce dependency on natural gas at the Calgren facility. This is a depiction of a flow chart for the biogas facility. However, I'm going to leave more further explanation to the applicant once the public hearing is opened. The means of getting the dairy waste to the project site requires 10 to 12 truck trips per day for farm trucks bringing manure solids from local farms. It is proposed that these truck trips will offset existing truck traffic and handling by area dairies necessary to dredge, compost, and export manure solids. These solids will be mixed in the pit with the piped liquids from 4J Dairy. The manure flush from 4J will be piped to the liquid tank and then mixed in the pit as needed. And further explanation will be presented by the applicant. Once the manure has passed to the digester, the solids will be removed via mechanical separating equipment and placed on the storage slab for distribution, while the liquids are piped back to 4J Dairy's retention pond. The pipes are proposed to be 8 to 14 inches in diameter. Although you can't see it very well in this graphic, this is a depiction of the proposed pipeline route from 4J Dairies, which is located here, excuse me, located at where I can find my mouse, at this location, and it will be piped to the subject facility. The gas produced from the processing of manure feedstock will be transported to Calgren via specified piping. The piping will be installed underground along the east fence line of the Calgren property. No permitted on-site employees for the site. Personnel working at the Calgren facility will make approximately 2 trips per day for maintenance. Water supply and sewage disposal will be provided by Calgren. A mitigated neck deck was prepared for the project by Dave Mitchell with Michael Brandman Associates. Circulation site plan was also submitted with the application, as well as the landscaping plan. A mitigated neck deck was prepared by Dave Mitchell, as stated. Several comments were received during the comment period, and also additional comments were received regarding the project in general. And staff received a phone call yesterday from a citizen of the Pixie area as well. Dave Mitchell will be responding to the comments received pertaining the environmental document, after which staff will respond to additional comments received and finish staff's presentation. So I'll introduce Dave Mitchell at this time.
Thank you, Charlotte. This is a, well, first of all, any comments from my fellow commissioners at this point? Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing, and I will open public testimony at this time. And excuse me?
I was going to continue the presentation.
You're going to continue the presentation? Thank you.
You're hired by the county, right?
Could you explain who you are?
My name is Dave Mitchell with Michael Brandman Associates, environmental consultant that prepared the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. And I'm just going to provide some information about the document.
For the county of Tulare.
For the county.
All right, so this is a continuation of the presentation. Go, please go.
The county will, staff will come back to finish up.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, Planning Commission. Glad to be here. As we said, Michael Brandman Associates out of our Fresno office prepared the environmental document for this project. And what I want to do is first provide an overview of what's in the document, and then a little bit on the mitigation measures, and somewhat on the comments. The review period ended for this document at the end of May. We included several technical studies with the document, including air quality, biological, and cultural resource record searches to provide additional supporting information for our conclusions. One of the new things that's out now to support these kind of projects is a program EIR prepared by the California Water Board, or Regional Water Board. And they in this case, provided a series of mitigation measures that they would like to see in projects that we included in the neg deck. The program EIR focuses on the general impacts of digesters and what kind of impacts you could expect to see from those, and then the Water Board expects the local agencies to address any localized impacts, specifically due to the location of the project. And the ISM&D found all impacts to be less than significant with the inclusion of mitigation measures. Here's just a list of the mitigation measures, not in detail, but to cover what the general nature of them. Project does include a mitigation measure to require an odor mitigation plan, and there is odors due to handling manure, just as you'd expect from this. However, the manure is fresh manure that hasn't had a chance to digest much, so we believe that the odor was at this point, at the point where it's being handled on the Pixley biogas site, to be a less than significant emission. And the odor plan was viewed as additional assurance to the public and anyone else that they'll continue their management practices to properly handle the manure to prevent odors. There is a mitigation measure also. This is recommended by the Water Board EIR for best management practices to reduce PM10. We didn't find a significant impact of PM10. The Air District's guidelines recommend just complying with their Regulation 8 fugitive dust rules, but this once again provides additional assurance that the applicant will comply with the PM10 reduction requirements. That's the dust. We did the biological survey. There are endangered species in the area. None were seen on site, but just as a general procedure or protocol, they recommend prior to construction to do pre-construction surveys for pit foxes and burrowing owls. Did see squirrel holes, and that's where burrowing owls like to set up shop. The culture resources section of the NEGDEG recommended that standard mitigation measures, that if during grading and digging they find any cultural resources, that they follow certain procedures. There's also a recommendation to do pre-construction soil surveys and seismic constraints. You know, this is our pretty large concrete structures underground, and to make sure they're able to have enough information to build them and not collapse or, you know, to not crack. Also, there are some limited amount of hazardous materials involved on the site, and they are required to do a hazardous materials business plan. There's quite a number of measures in the hydrologic section. These are all recommended by the California Water Board to, as part of their, what they call a notice of intent process. For anybody that wants to build a digester, they have to go through a series of steps and prove to them that they're not going to degrade groundwater in any way. And you know, fairly extensive, and we think that provides that additional assurance that's needed. There is some equipment, you know, mechanical equipment that produces noise at the site. It's not operated that frequently, and most of the equipment is indoors. That would be like the pumps and things that make noise, you know, enclosed. But one of the things that this mitigation measure does is you know, make sure that the applicant has to demonstrate that to the county that it won't exceed county standards. And also there's a measure that during the construction cycle they'll do the standard measures to reduce noise from construction equipment. And it's mainly operating schedule, not operating at night. I did receive comments from a number of agencies and individuals. The Regional Water Board, their comments from the negative declaration included mitigation measures from their draft EIR. They pointed out that when they issued their final EIR, they changed some of the mitigation measures. There's mainly just clarifications on their part on what they were looking for in the mitigation language. So we included those you'll find those in response to comments, the revised language on the mitigation measures. The San Joaquin Valley Air District, they requested a screening analysis for to determine if there is a potential impact from mainly volatile organic compounds that are emitted from manure during handling at the site, and then also whether the boiler would have any toxic emissions. Mainly concerned about the toxic side. I'll discuss that one a little later, but just moving on. Cal Recycle, they were more interested in making sure that their permitting needs are met. They haven't made a final determination, but they think it may be categorized as a solid waste facility because it's handling the waste product, and it has other material brought in for processing. And so that's just a matter of the local enforcement agency, the county agency, handling the permitting for that and making sure that the project complies. There's pretty lengthy comments from Baker, Manick, and Jensen representing CDI, the California Dairies facility. Had concerns about air emissions from manure emissions, but mainly concerned about the odor, the potential for aerosol emissions from the manure itself that may have biocontamination, dust from potentially track out of vehicles driving in and out of the site that may get into their facility, and that also had some water quality concerns about making sure that wells weren't contaminated by any manure handling on the site. So there's pretty extensive, that's probably part of the package you got late, was the responses to those comments. and they're really detailed responses. We think we adequately covered either through mitigation measures or conditions, or explained why the comments weren't valid or wouldn't result in a need for additional work or measures beyond what's proposed. One of the things that the applicant has proposed to help with them is to put a cover on the holding tank, because most of the manure is held on the site, and that'll, we didn't see that as a large source of odor or volatile compounds when we reviewed the project, but out of any source, that would be where the manure is held the longest. So, and then it has the potential to be easily covered. So the applicant agreed to add a cover on that tank. The mixing pits, the other area there's open manure being brought in, and then it's injected into the digester. Only there for a limited amount of time. The idea on these projects is to get the manure into an airtight environment as fast as possible, because we're trying to produce gas, and it needs to be in an airtight environment to produce the gas and capture the gas. So on an ordinary basis, there wouldn't be any manure exposed to the air for more than 24 hours. And then the other factor is manure decomposition takes a long time. Even in a digester, it takes 22 days to digest manure to convert it to these gases. And so on that first day the manure is there, we think the emissions are pretty low. And also the odors, it's less odorous at that point. There's compounds called volatile organic compounds that are responsible for a lot of the odor. And then hydrogen sulfides is another odor pollutant. Those are produced later on in the digestive process. So we expect that emissions of those pollutants will be low at the time that they're at the site. Now, once they're in the digester, it's one of the mitigation. These digesters are actually mitigation measures themselves. They reduce emissions from at dairies. That's one of the reasons for doing them, because they consume all that organic matter, turn it into methane. Now it's available for burning for a useful purpose. And on the water quality side, we believe that complying with the water board's requirements with their mitigation measures, their notice of intent process to approve these digesters is going to be more than adequate to ensure that there's not going to be a water quality impact. The digester itself is a concrete lined vessel. It has sealed joints, and anyway, the design will be reviewed by the water board to demonstrate that it's not going to degrade water quality. So with that, we're confident that they're not going to cause a water quality impact. We received comment also, Chevron Environmental Management. There's a old abandoned it's a petroleum pipeline that's parallel to the site. It goes along the railroad right away, and they just want to make sure that nobody, that concern is taken when they're doing excavating, that nobody hits that. But it appears that it's off the project site, so we think that's not a significant issue. Young Woolridge, attorneys for 3R Land Company, also submitted comments. There's a response in the record for them. Some of the comments were the same, and many of them were land use related that maybe the county staff will talk about a little bit. The Public Utilities Commission provided a comment that wasn't really significant, and the Lower Tule River and Pixie Irrigation District wants to ensure that no impacts to their canal system or it's actually no trucks are used on their canal banks, and they basically want to ensure that no manure enters their canal. And let's see. Just a recap of the concerns. Impacts from odor, toxic dust, and aerosols. And we think those are addressed through mainly through the mitigation added to cover the one tank. We were not able to find any information about the aerosols that shows there's no standards for aerosol on what would be a significant impact for that. The commenter thinks any aerosols that may have biological contamination would be a significant impact, but did not provide any information that would show that that is, what level that would be, so we don't have anything to compare it to. There was concern with aesthetic impacts for the facility. The site is viewable from the Road 120, or Avenue 120 overpass off of 99, and you're approximately 20 feet above the site, and someone looking that direction could see it. But our conclusion was that this is, you're looking down on an industrial area. You have a major ethanol plant is part of that. Buildings and facilities are consistent with other industrial buildings, and even the CDI facility is not that much different than what's going to be here. Now, this is manure, so that from the close up, it's going to be screened by landscaping, and then on the east side of the project, it's screened by Highway 99 and the railroad right away. So we still believe that impact on aesthetics is less than significant based on site and the screening that is provided. And there is a water basin on the project site that's adjacent to the project site that there was concern that it would get contaminated with manure. The applicant is using or engineering the site so that drainage from only places where those trucks do not go would drain towards the stormwater basin. Other water goes to the dairy. It'll be pumped back into the drainage system that takes the wastewater back to the dairy for placement in a double-line lagoon. I said concerns over plan consistency, and that's, I'll let county staff handle that. And then deferred mitigation, there's a couple of measures where it requires including a plan, like the odor mitigation plan, and they consider that deferred mitigation. However, first, we don't see a significant impact already. The mitigation plan itself will be developed based on actual operation that gets put in there. And anyway, with no impact that's being mitigated other than providing additional assurance, we think it's okay that they do that prior to construction. Same thing with the hazard plan. And okay, let's see. As I said before, we did provide detailed responses in the staff report. The air emissions are less than significant, and that's in accordance with the San Joaquin Valley Air District thresholds. As I was going to mention earlier, we got a comment from the San Joaquin Valley Air District that looked for a screening analysis for the VOCs. We did not think that was an issue, and the Air District never identified that as an issue before. We got started on this process. The outcome, anyway, we haven't been able to find emission factors for a mixing pit for purpose. There are emission factors for anaerobic lagoons, but it's not the same process that's carried out on this site. What we're proposing to do is work with the San Joaquin Valley Air District to prepare a health risk assessment that identifies emission factors that they'll approve, and then put a condition in the project that would require the applicant to demonstrate that they're not going to exceed the health-based risk threshold, which is a risk increase of 10 in a million cancer from the project for the nearest receptor. So on that one, we want to propose that we're looking to propose that as an additional mitigation measure or condition of approval. And I guess I'll go ahead and just read our proposed language for that right now. It's prior to commencing construction, the applicant shall prepare a health risk assessment that demonstrates that the project does not exceed this SJV APCD toxic threshold of significance of an increase in cancer risk of 10 in a million. The HRA shall be available for review by interested individuals and subject to approval by the San Joaquin Valley Air District. Anyway, we think with that measure, there's provided adequate assurance that the project will not go forward if there is a significant risk. And we feel like there isn't, based on our knowledge of how the odors and the toxic emissions are formed during the anaerobic digestion process, and that they're mostly contained by the process. So we feel it's a reasonable thing to not require that at this time, but allow it to go forward prior to construction. Okay, moving down a bit, we do have the water quality mitigation measures, and we believe that the Water Board's process is adequate to protect the water quality. The project is consistent with its surroundings, and the regulatory processes that the anaerobic digester will still be subject to after this approval are adequate to ensure that the measures for water, air, and et cetera will be accomplished and not deferred. And then, like I mentioned before, we have added conditions of approval to the project that would be a part of this package already. And that's all I had, and I'll turn it back to Charlotte.
Mr. Chair, I've got a question or two.
Yes, sir.
The manure that's being hauled onto the site here, what's the condition of that? Is it dried? Is it wet?
It's wet. It has a water content of approximately 75%.
So you're hauling a lot of water is what you're doing, huh?
75 or 80%. So it's very
So
moist.
it must be, is it in a tanker?
We can let the applicant describe their actual trucks.
Okay.
They
I'd like to know
describe them as farm trucks.
The next question is then, how does that get into how's it delivered to the digester from the truck?
They're dump trucks, so the manure would be dumped directly into the mixing pit. And then there's a wash system, and they wash the truck out to get all the manure out of the truck before it returns back to where it came from.
Is there a means to clear the, I'm sure it's, the surface coming in is an all-weather surface, is it?
Concrete.
All concrete? Is there a method to wash that down, because that stuff gets ground up into a fine powder and very quickly, and particularly in the summertime, and blows away?
That's their plan, is that they have the watering system on site to wash and it's sloped, so all the debris flows into the mixing pit from the area where they're unloading the trucks.
Okay, thank you.
I noticed in the reading material there were several references that there are a number of these in California. How many in Tulare County digester biogas operations like this? Any others?
One in Tulare, 9 in California.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Excuse me, you did say that the applicant would be explaining the trucks. I have a question when
Details about project operation.
when that comes up.
Is this across 120 from California Dairies, or how close is it to California Dairies?
It's about 1,500 feet to their air intakes from where the digester is going to be.
So it's across from...
Across the overpass to the north. There's
Road. Across the road.
Gil, look at
The better-
digester cells on the south part of the site. The north parts remain, right now it's being used for composting, or fermenting, I guess it is.
It's not across the freeway, it's right across the...
Across just the overpass on Avenue 120.
You're saying it's not across the overpass, it's right across the road, right?
There's an overpass for the railroad and the freeway on Avenue 120. It's on an overpass, so it's Avenue 120's elevator right there.
It's on the same side of Highway 99.
Correct.
There's California Dairies.
The white building is the white building above there, isn't it?
Aye.
The dairy.
Sorry about that.
The milk processing. is the
You can
white
see
building.
California Dairies is located on the north side of Avenue 120. Here is the subject site. Calgren Facilities is located here. The biomass facility will be located on the southern portion of the subject site, approximately 2.5 acres of this 8-acre site on the south side.
Any other questions? Charlotte, are you continuing?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You did receive an addendum to your agenda, and I'm sorry if you haven't had the opportunity to read all the information, but the addenda included all the comments that we have received to date and responses to those comments by Dave Mitchell as well as staff. You also received a revised resolution updating the findings and conditions and mitigation conditions in that resolution, and there will be another mitigation measure added.
Is that something you just handed out? Because I don't have it.
No, it should have been forwarded to you electronically by staff.
Which brings up an interesting point. What did you send us?
The addendum that was prepared by staff.
I mean, I have like 7, and I want to make sure I have all of them, that I've read all of them, so.
There was an email, Charlotte, that came with about 6 or 7 attachments. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, one of them was, well, there was one by San Joaquin
Correct.
Valley Air Pollution Control.
Yes.
Was that one?
Those were Baker, Manic, yes.
Baker, Manic, and
Woldridge,
Jensen. Was that
yes.
another?
Yes. All of those are letters we received during the comment period for the environmental document.
Well, let's go through them to make sure I have them all. I've read everything. We have Air District, PDF. Okay, that was one of those. Is that one?
Yes, that is one.
Okay, the Baker, Manic.
Yes.
Jensen, PDF. I have that. Cal Recycling.
Correct.
Response from LTID.
Correct.
That one. Water Board.
Yes.
And Young and
Woldridge.
Woodridge, that was the other. And that was it?
There are 8, it should be 8 responses.
Chevron's in there.
Chevron.
Chevron, one
I
from
only
Chevron.
have 6.
Cal Recycle.
The ones I read off are the only ones I have.
PUC.
PUC, yes.
Those were all attachments.
California Public Utilities Commission.
About 3 different
Excuse me,
emails.
Charlotte, where was the comments, the answers to the comments, the responses?
Chairman, I'm holding up what the document looked like.
In the addendum,
The addendum is there, yeah, I have that.
The last attachment of any attachments to the document. It contains all the comments from the letters put on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, based on what I have here, I cannot make a decision today. So I do not have all the documents. I will not vote on this until I've had a chance to review the documents. So that's the bottom line for me. You can hear the rest of the hearing, but I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
I don't have the information, so
So noted, so noted. I have that document, but I likewise have not had a chance to read it. I just printed it out last evening. But let's continue with the presentation
okay.
and comments from the public, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, additional comments were received, had to do with general plan consistency and zoning consistency, and it was stated in the letters received that there was lack of consistency in those areas, and that's not an accurate statement. The proposal is consistent with the county general plan, the Pixley specific plan, and all other elements of the general plan. The proposal is also consistent with the zoning ordinance and uses allowed in those particular zones. Staff did receive a phone call yesterday from a citizen from Pixley area, Mr. Moorhead, I believe his name was, and he was concerned because he indicated that the Pixley Town Council had not received a consultation on this project. They didn't know anything about it. However, we checked with our records and our admin staff, and the application, or the consultation packet was forwarded to the Town Council. It could be that the county has on record an old address for the Town Council. The county is required to forward information to addresses on record, the last known addresses on record. So if there has been a change of address, the Town Council would need to let the county know. Noticing was also accomplished via the newspaper and in the Tulare Register, I believe, for the appropriate time period. Staff does have a recommendation for this project because it's based on the fact that the proposed project is consistent with the county plan, the general plan elements, based on the fact that the environmental document for the proposal has been expertly prepared, which was tiered off the environmental impact report from the Water Board. And those types of for those types of projects. Based on the fact that there has been a lack of evidence, scientific or otherwise, that would negate or disprove what's been prepared in the environmental document. However, it's my understanding that you want to table this project or have time to review the other things, but my recommendation is to move to certify the mitigated negative declaration and move to approve the project, but that's certainly up to you. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any further comments from commissioners at this point? All right. We're going to continue on here. I'm going to open public comment on this project. There are proponents and opponents to a project most of the time. I'm going to take a hand count out there very quickly. Is the applicant here? Are there proponents of this project here? I would assume the same. Are there opponents to this project? All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off with the applicant, and the applicant is welcome to come up and make comments. Introduce yourself. We will entertain questions from the commission, and I'll try to be as democratic as possible to move through as many, and I would suggest that those of you that have similar comments, if there's a spokesperson for your position, try to have that person articulate that position, and we'll try to avoid redundancy in terms of comments here so that we can move along as expeditiously as possible. So may I have your name and address?
My name is Lyle Schleier. I'm the CEO of Calgary Renewable Fuels and Pixley Biogas, the applicant here. Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Good morning.
Commissioners. Actually, with your indulgence, we'd like to split this presentation up a little bit. We'll all be very brief. I'd like to talk about why we got involved in this project. We have, our team includes a digester expert, Daryl Moss, who is better able to answer your questions regarding digesters themselves. He operates several. And Craig Hartman, who is our project engineer and has worked with dairies extensively. So if I may begin. I'm with Calgren, as I mentioned. We run the ethanol plant in Pixley. We pride ourselves in making some of the lowest carbon intensity renewable fuel in the country, and in making a high protein, low fat distiller's grain that we sell to about 50 local dairies. We were encouraged to get involved in this digester project by a solicitation from the California Energy Commission. Their goal in that solicitation was to promote the manufacture and use of low carbon intensity fuels within the state. They awarded us a grant for the digester, but it is contingent upon CEQA approval. I can provide more detail if you'd like, But essentially, to keep the grant in place, we must get approval from you folks. Essentially, they have to finish their approval process, which includes a CEQA review after hearing from the lead agency. And this was in their 2009-2010 budget cycle, and they're required by law to approve it, so they tell us, by their last meeting in June, which is the 29th. And they have to do their CEQA review, which they pick up off of you folks. So time is of the essence with us. And I appreciate that from the comments that not everyone has seen all the documents, and certainly we're not trying to rush anyone into a decision that they're not ready to make. But if we could possibly work with you, if we don't keep the grant in place, all our funding is tiered off that grant, so the project will die. And we've been very frank with everyone about that.
What is your timeline for CEQA to approve this and get the project on board?
With all due respect, we're not absolutely sure. Originally, they told us that we had to get through the Planning Commission here. They had to hear from the county by, I believe it was May 27th. We told them that was just not possible. Working with your staff, we were told that it may be possible, certainly they didn't promise us anything, to get approval here today. We told the California Energy Commission that we cannot do better than June 8th. If that's not good, we told them this 3 months ago. We said, if that's not good enough, then let's all walk away. Let's not do this project, because it was conditioned upon that funding. So I believe what's been discussed here today by opening and hearing all the comments and making a decision a few days later, we can hold things together. But I can't honestly tell you, I know that for a fact. The Energy Commission has committed to work with us. They like this project. They tell us that by law they can't have the grant go hard until they do their CEQA review, and by law, if it's in their budget cycle for 2009-2010, has to be approved by the end of June. Within those parameters, they'll work with us. What that actually means in terms of timing, I'm afraid I frankly don't know. Other than, as I said earlier, they said that they wanted a full month before their June board, it's a June board meeting, and we said, sorry guys, county can't do that. They can't be that responsive. And finally, and we said we're not even going to go forward if it's going to be a waste of time, of everybody's time, yours included. And they finally said, look, we'll work with you. Do what you can. So that's the best I have today.
I don't want to get into a lot of date details, but what I'm hearing you say then is if this commission needs a little more time to review this project, and it's like 7 more days, that's not a deal breaker.
I think we can work with that. We will go back to them immediately. Whatever you tell us, we will go back to them immediately. We've been very open with them and everybody at the county that we need a decision. We would like your considered view, of course. They're entitled to that, and you're entitled to know everything and make a determination. I do not believe, sir, that that's a deal breaker, but I cannot assure you. But we will be glad to check with them and get back with you. If that's the best you can do, that's the best you can do, and we will tell them that. If I may continue.
You may.
As mentioned previously, the project uses waste heat. Well, what was mentioned previously is the project is integrated with our ethanol plant. And actually what it does is it uses waste heat from our ethanol process to operate the digester at an efficient temperature year-round. And we will burn the biomethane in a new boiler configured to resolve some design issues at our plant. The net result is we'll be able to make fuel, ethanol fuel, that is even cleaner than it is now. I mentioned the members of our project team who will help explain what this project is. Also with us today is one of our owners, Walt Dwelly, who would like to speak to you very briefly. And I noticed that Frank Junio with 4J is in the audience as well. 4J is the the dairy to whom we will be connected with a pipeline. They're a critical part of this project. I believe that staff at our request passed to you an online article that appeared recently. It describes, and that's key because that's the one. That's the one. Yes, sir. In deciding whether to get involved in this project, we visited Fiscalini Dairy Farms near Modesto. They have both a digester and a cheese plant. Nettie Drake, Fiscalini's environmental consultant, was quoted in that article you have as saying their digester has absolutely no negative impact on their cheese making. Actually, the quote that caught my eye was her saying, "You might think people would suffer a yuck factor, but once they tour the place, it's more a wow factor." John Fiscalini said he had to overcome significant regulatory hurdles to build his digester. That's because he burns the biomethane in a reciprocating engine to generate electricity, and the Air District has a problem with emissions from those engines. In contrast, perhaps because we're burning the biomethane in a boiler which is already permitted, this will allow us to back off, actually, more natural gas than we will be burning as biogas. We have strong regulatory support, not only from the California Energy Commission, but also from the Water District and from the Air District and the Water Board. In fact, we see this, and we believe they see this as a model project in many ways. Until recently, the only negative comment we got was from Ralph Friend of 3R, who farms the land west of us and wishes to develop it for commercial and industrial use. He has an easement in Groves for rail access across our property, and we were careful to lay out the digester so it does not interfere with any of his proposed rail routes. To our surprise, California Dairies, a quarter-mile north of us, roughly a quarter-mile, also has voiced objections. We met with both 3R and Cal Dairies to assure them we'll be good neighbors and not interfere with their operations. But that wasn't enough. They insisted we enclose the whole site in a negative pressure air scrub building, including the dirt-like, essentially pathogen-free digestate that comes out of the digester. My sense is they've fallen prey to Nettie Drake's yuck factor. Cal Dairies said they're concerned a client like Nestle's might be turned off by the idea of a digester a quarter-mile downwind. We think they're overreacting. After all, California Dairies is a dairy processor, and their facility is surrounded by dairy farms that currently use manure and wastewater to fertilize crops, certainly surrounded by farms. Dairy digesters clean up the air. Ultimately, that will help Cal Dairies, 3R, and everyone else in the community. Pairing a dairy digester with an industrial operation like ours helped us avoid some of the regulatory hurdles that typically plague digester developers like John Fiscalini. As a matter of fact, John told us when we met with him that had he realized the extent of the regulatory hassles he had to overcome, he never would have gone forward with the project. As Craig Hartman will address in a moment, dairies face problems that digesters can help cure. This community has an interest, we believe, in paving the way for more dairy digesters, not shying away from them because they involve waste. Dairies have to deal with that waste. It's part of their symbiotic relationship. We ask that you keep this in mind as you consider our proposal. With that, I'd like to turn, unless there's questions, and I'll be here to respond to questions, I'd like to turn this over to Darrell Moss, who knows far more about digesters than I ever will.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for taking the time to hear this project. My name is Darrell Moss. My address is 2145 Cadry Street, Redding, California, and I am the project manager for Pixley Biogas. I also own and operate 2 anaerobic digester facilities of a similar design and construction in the state of Washington. Those 2 digesters process manure from approximately 4,000 cows. They produce electricity equivalent to 1.2 megawatts, or about enough power for...
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could we please turn off the cell phone? That was mentioned at the beginning of the session. Thank you.
These our 2 operating digesters produce enough power to run about 1,000 homes, and we also use our waste heat to heat about 4 acres of greenhouse. My parents were both dairy farmers when they grew up, and most of my friends were growing up. So a few years ago, when I got out of the Air Force, me and my brother, all of our friends were dairy farmers in Washington, and they were interested in digesters. They were interested in the benefits to their dairies. They were interested in the air quality, water quality, economic benefits. So we started a company, basically, with a bunch of our friends from high school to put in digesters on dairy farms that couldn't do it themselves. We currently have 3 more in development, 2 in Tillamook County, Oregon, 1 in King County, Washington, and we very much wanted to get a digester built in California. California has the most dairies in the country and some of the most severe water and air quality issues associated with dairies, and so it's an ideal place for digesters to get constructed. But because of some of the regulatory obstacles, it's been very difficult to get one built so far. When we've been looking into California, we've been trying to find a way to build one, and when I contacted Mr. Schleier at Calgary Renewable Fuels, it looked like an ideal location. They have land that's available that's zoned for light industrial, commercial. They have a lot of waste heat, which we can use to heat the manure. They have a high demand for natural gas, and they have dairies all around them. So we began working together, and I agreed to come on as project manager to see if a digester could be built in Tulare County to show that these facilities can be built and have a benefit. When I started going around to the local dairy farmers, they mostly laughed at me because they said for 10 years people have been coming on their dairies and telling them that there's a future where these digesters are going to clean up the air, water, make lots of money for everyone, and that hasn't happened. Tulare County has 1 digester. It's what we call a covered lagoon. It's on Dave Hilarity's dairy east of Tulare. And basically that is a big hole in the ground with manure in it and a cover on the top. It relies on the ambient air temperature to make gas. And it has some benefits, but it's a much more low-cost, low operations design. What we're proposing to install is called a controlled temperature digester, where it's continuously heated to 100 Fahrenheit. It's held in there for 3 weeks. We can guarantee that the manure is processed, the pathogens are degraded, more of an upscale design, which is popular. So we like this location. And eventually, after meeting with the farmers, when they were convinced that this was actually a real project, that we weren't just out to make a quick buck, but rather we had a local company in Calgary that was willing to put up the land and the financing, we could actually show that the digester will work and that it's a proven design, they were very willing to join us. And you'll hear a little bit from Mr. Junio later, who was the main dairy involved in the project. Our design is on operation right now in 57 digester sites in the United States, all designed by GHD out of Wisconsin. Not one of those 57 has ever been shut down, which has been a problem in the industry up until now. And the builder we propose is Angar Corporation, who has 7 projects operating in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. Since we got started, we knew that the main problem with digesters that they haven't developed has been regulatory. In fact, one of the early industry leaders, Microgy Incorporated, out of Texas, attempted to build a very large project in Tulare and Kings County, spent several $1 million in permitting, and eventually gave up and went bankrupt because they weren't able to actually turn a spade of dirt. So very early on, we met with our neighbors, we met with the regulatory agencies, and made sure we did all the correct things to make sure the digester would be improved environmentally. As you'll hear a little bit later from our project engineer, the water boards have realized this problem, and they've actually done a categorical EIR, or a programmatic EIR, that will make sure there's already an impact report for all the different mitigation measures that are required for a digester, and we've been able to tee off of that. We've met with the Air District. We've already had them review Calgren's existing permits. We've already had them look at the project. Most of these meetings, some of them took place almost a year ago now. And, of course, we met with the county. And all 3 of those organizations have been very helpful wanting to get this project built. We went for a preliminary site plan application, which was advertised publicly and heard back in September, at which time none of the existing comments were heard, and we had nothing but positive support in September of 2010. We believe that we can mitigate any remaining concerns, as you've heard from the county staff and their consultant, which Calgren has hired, that most of the concerns are not actually likely to be a factor from the digester site. We have this before. On my facilities, when you first start them, people say, what are you doing? You're going to process waste. But within a few months of startup, all the neighbors are bringing their neighbors over, and they're bringing their friends over, and they want tours. They want to show. They say, look, our community's making energy out of waste. Look, we're able to recycle our energy. We're able to upgrade our farms. And the dairy farmers, we have a waiting list of how many of these things we can build. My brother and I can't go fast enough because the dairy farmers love these projects. They offer benefits for everyone involved. So we are very willing to do whatever else we can do to the project to make sure it doesn't harm any of the neighbors. We believe that it will not and that it can be operated very well. And I will look forward to any comments you may have to help us get this project forward.
I've got a question. The manure that goes into this, into the digester, is that loaded on a 123-day charge, or do you put it in daily as needed? Or
So there's two sources of manure, one of which will be liquid flush manure, fresh flush manure from 4J Farms. That will come via an underground pipeline. That water comes in too thin to make good digester material, so we're additionally trucking in separated solids. So it's about a 20%, 25% dry matter material, which looks like, wet manure solids. It's essentially a heavy, wet dirt. So we take that directly from farms at about 6 to 10 loads per day of farm manure. Those farms will also be taking the digested fiber back out. After the manure is run through the digester, we've essentially killed all the pathogens, and it comes out as a pathogen-free, almost like a peat product. So they'll be rinsing the trucks and returning with that clean bedding for their cows. So right now, most dairy farms, a lot of them at least, will separate out all their solids either by dredging the lagoon or by separating out the solids and then turning them and stacking them and windrowing them. They'll instead be able to take them right to us and take back processed, clean solids to allow them to make cow bedding.
On the Sierra to Sea, where is that facility?
That facility, I believe, is in Wisconsin. That was something the editor must have grabbed, although I have handed out some pictures of my existing facilities in Washington. Especially there's 2 or 3 shots of different collection ponds, which have been one of the things the neighbors have been very concerned about, and I wanted to show what those look like.
That's my question is the big blue round, those are covered ponds, I'm assuming?
That's actually a third type of digester. That's called a complete mix. Ours, if you see in the photos, it looks like there's a large dirt berm against them. It's actually a concrete tank that is buried in the ground. We like this design. There's no moving parts in it whatsoever. It just uses temperature and pressure to circulate the manure. And so that's a design, as I said, it's a leading one in the United States. In Europe, the round tanks you see are much more common, but they both operate on the same principle. You enclose and heat manure in an airtight environment. The mixing pit is where we receive manure. Both liquid manure comes from our storage tank. The trucks dump their manure into that pit, and from there it's pumped into the digester itself, which is the large submerged vessel you see.
And will that pit be covered?
That manure, the mixing pit, not at present. The holding tank where the liquid manure is held will be, we're proposing. The tank is not intended to be covered.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry, and then I had several questions. This Four Creeks design, is that possible to put that up on the, I have questions. The legend is so small I can't read it.
Craig Hartman from Four Creeks will be following me. He's going to get that up. He has.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the mitigation measures that was discussed is we've looked at various ways to reduce odors, but in our experience, some of the requests that were made from the opposition parties to actually enclose all of these structures in airtight negative pressure vessels with bioscrubbers on the air and those sorts of things are just, they're not economical. I'm not aware of them done anywhere in Europe or the United States, simply because you normally build these in a farm zone that has a certain amount of manure, and we do our best to mitigate. But that's something I would expect in the chemical warfare world of the United States Air Force that I came from. So.
Okay, so could that be explained, the legend? What?
Sure. The large 2 blue objects in the corner, the upper right corner, are the digester vessels. It looks like one from the outside. It's just that there's an interior wall. And those, as I said, will hold manure for about 3 weeks. You put manure on one side, it comes out the other side 3 weeks later, operating on hydraulics. Then you see the octagon just to the west, I'm sorry, the south of them. That's the receiving pit. And that's the item most likely to make manure or make odors. And I believe Mr. David Mitchell was talking about how they were working on emission factors to make sure the odor wouldn't be too high from that. Then just north of that, the item marked number 4, that's a mechanical building, holds pumps, blowers. And the item to the west of that, that's the tank that receives the incoming manure from Junios, just the liquid manure. And then it's metered out of there via an underground pipe into the octagon.
And that's also an open tank?
That is an open tank, which we have proposed covering now. So I think that's in the proposal. And then finally, you see on the southern edge, I guess this would be the eastern edge, that's where the manure solids will be stacked. They come out looking a little bit like peat or mulch. They're black, a lot like compost. So.
Thank you.
How large is that number 2 pit or tank?
18-foot size, approximately 1,650 square feet.
And it's not a covered tank?
No, sir, it's not. It looks similar to the pictures right there. That one's a little smaller. That one's 35 feet across. I believe ours is closer to 45.
Reason you couldn't cover it? Is there a technical reason why you couldn't cover it?
Operating dump trucks and personnel in there, it would be very difficult. I've never seen it done, but if it was absolutely necessary, we could try it. But there's pumps that need to be serviced. They need to be lifted out. The trucks need to dump, all of that.
Like a hexagon building or something like that?
I've never seen it done, sir, but I suppose it could be tried.
You said there are 57 digesters in the United States.
There's 57 designed by GHD. There's about 120 in the country.
Do they all, is there a standard for the construction of these in terms of the specifications?
Yes, sir. There's a National Resources Conservation Service, puts out 3 different standards, one for ambient temperature digesters. Ours is for controlled temperature digesters. So
Do we have those specs built into our application someplace?
We've actually been building to a higher standard as required by the Water Board. The NRCS standard is a very general one, but the Water Board, as Mr. Hartman can tell you, has these anti-degradation standards, and so we're following Water Board
But
requirements.
they're part of Calgren's application? Specifications are in that package?
So the specifications are in the initial study and mitigated neg deck from MBA Associates, which are tiered off of the Water Board EIR.
And there are environmental standards that accompany those specifications for emissions?
I don't think so, sir. I don't think they specifically accompany the digester. I believe that's an Air Board thing, as Mr. Mitchell said, that the Air Board is trying to decide what the emissions are from a digester. We have emission factors for lagoons, for farms with open slab. What we have is a very small open slab, but it's mixed, and so they're attempting to develop those with the Air District, and I believe the proposed mitigation measure was to require that as a condition of our permit.
Is this stacked product, does that have commercial viability?
It does. It's sold usually into the nursery market or to the dairy market as a bedding. It's very similar to peat moss.
Your project up in, is it the Rexville Power? Is that yours?
Yes, sir. That's our first one.
How close is that to a facility like California Dairies?
It's not at all close. Both of ours are on dairies. There are similar ones. As I mentioned, there's a Vermont milk bottling facility that has one on site. There's also a meat packing plant in Wisconsin. Those are both of our design. And then in Modesto, they have one near a cheese plant, but none of mine are near.
These facilities that have some processing plant right next to them, do they have any air quality data that might be available such for in regards to biosecurity?
I could certainly ask Ms. Drake, who says she's willing to make hers available from Fiscalini Farms in Modesto. They have, most of their air permitting surrounds the engine, which is typically the issue. But I could ask, she's on record as saying there's no impact, but I don't know if there's quantifiable data. I could ask.
You're the project engineer?
No, sir, I'm the project manager, Mr. Hartman from Four Creeks.
And who was the digester expert? I didn't catch.
I am, sir.
You are, okay.
I hope so. Does it sound like it?
It sounds like it. It does.
In that case, I'll turn it over to Mr. Craig Hartman from Four Creeks Engineering.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Craig Hartman, Principal Engineer with Four Creeks, located here in Visalia, 1150 North Chenoweth. I serve as a project engineer for Pixley Biogas, and I've been part of the team since the conception of the project. I was born and raised in the dairy industry, west of Tulare, Page and Road 76. I chose to not continue operating the facility and to go to school to help, provide solutions that the dairy industry is going to face. I received a civil engineering degree and civil and environmental engineering degree from Cal State San Luis Obispo. Recently, Four Creeks has audited water usage and waste manure management at 120 dairies within the Central Valley region, which compromises probably about 18% of the milk herd, the state's milk herd population. And I can tell you firsthand that I know that digesters are in need for nutrient management problems that our industry faces. The project we present to you this morning is state-of-the-art. And it's a good example of how technology can be married and mitigate many problems faced between different industries. According to the 2007 census of dairies and dairy cows, there are approximately 1.6 million milk cows on 1,600 dairies within our Central Valley region. Each cow produces about 112 pounds of manure per day, hard to believe. And if you add all this together, it equates to about 180 million pounds of manure generated per day within our valley region. This is substantial, and it's also a source of renewable energy and can provide a new industry and market here for our area. The Water Board has already blazed the trail for digester projects in the state by certifying the programmatic EIR in the late 2010 year, and I'll put some speaking points up here that the Water Board states. The Water Board states that this program, or excuse me, the programmatic EIR supports the Bioenergy Action Plan for the state of California. It supports the Executive Order S0606, which establishes targets for the use and production of biofuels and biopower, reducing the time period to develop and issue permits associated with digesters. We've mentioned the critical path that our project has been faced with. We have to, when we got our grant, we didn't know that we had to go through the CEC, one of the conditions wasn't going through CEQA. And so we later found, or they later actually told us that we had to go through CEQA to get the grant. So we laid out, the critical path to permitting the project, and we're not trying to rush the project, but to put all the agencies into place and to meet everybody's deadline. This is the calendar that we've been presented. Another objective is to enable the state agencies to achieve Order S1408, reducing the cost to comply with CEQA. Okay, so we're a product of that. Addressing the cross-media environmental requirements of multiple state and local agencies in one EIR. This is hard to do, to get all the agencies to produce the programmatic EIR. Increasing opportunities for energy companies to achieve the 2010 and 2020 renewable portfolio standards in the state. More importantly for Tulare County is providing an alternative waste treatment method for dairy manure and other organic waste streams, and creating a new revenue source for California dairies. And lastly, assisting in meeting the greenhouse reduction measures associated with Assembly Bill AB 32. The global warming potential of methane being released from a dairy lagoon is 26 times more than if it goes through a digester, which I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but that's the reason that digesters are such a good thing for our valley. Our project team has met with the Water Board many times since day one to ensure that our project matches the required mitigation measures of their programmatic EIR. We started this in September, and their certification did not happen until 2010. So our permitting process has been a moving target to follow what they've already done. Folks, there is no surprise why we are here today. Tulare County is the dairy leader of the state and the nation. The proposed project uses state-of-the-art technology and may break the ice for a new industry and potential source of revenue for our local economy. And not only for dairies, but industrial operations and professional services like myself. The decision made today, or somewhere in the future, if that's the case, will set a precedent for future projects permitted within our county. Our county is in dire need of digester projects to support the longevity of our #1 industry. As a native of Tulare County, the dairy community, and as a local environmental professional, I ask you to support our project. Next up, I'm going to introduce the owner of the facility and the Calgren operation, Mr. Walt Dwelly.
Good morning. My name is Walt Dwelly. Address is 2912 Keogh Court here in Visalia. Born and raised in Visalia, been in business here all my working life. My company is Nella Oil Company, a petroleum marketing company, and Nella is roughly a 30% owner of Calgren and the proposed Pixley biogas facility. Being a local resident, I understand the local economy quite well, understand environmental regulations. Being a petroleum marketing company, we deal with those regs virtually every day. In 40 years in business, this is the first project I've ever done supported by California Air Resources Board, the Water Board, and the California Energy Commission. It just never happens in my business. I'd like to comment on one comment that Craig made. In terms of methane gas, my understanding is it's 23 times worse as a greenhouse gas in terms of the ozone layer than CO2. CO2 is the villain that you hear about all the time, and this is 23 times worse than that. The one other aspect is I'm also a commercial and a private pilot. I fly in and out of Visalia Airport probably 4 times a week. I'm very in tune to wind direction. And the opponents of this project, who are CDI and Friend, are both upwind from us. As I have, over my experience in 40 years, I can probably count on 2 hands the number of times I've used a runway other than the northwest runway. In other words, I think you've all seen the runway that parallels Highway 99. The pilots always take off and land into the wind, and it's only a very rare occurrence when it blows in the other direction. We're aware of the opposition from our neighbors. We've tried hard to work with them to alleviate their concerns. They've made some suggestions which are very good, and we've incorporated them into our project. We're surprised at their stance, given the fact that we are in the middle of dairy country. They seem to agree with the project, but would like it to be elsewhere. Sounds a little bit to me like the not in my backyard syndrome, and I would say if not in the middle of dairy country, then where would you put such a project? We're puzzled by their opposition. CDI is a large milk processor whose suppliers are precisely the dairies that we're supporting in this project. The other is a neighbor whom we met with early on in the process, and he proposed that we site this project on his property, which he now is wanting us to protect his same property from this project. Some of they didn't make sense from an operational and an economic standpoint, so we declined that, and he now opposes it. In summary, I think it's a great project, and we urge you to approve it. I'd like to introduce Frank Junio, our dairy partner.
Good morning. My name is Frank Junio, and we are the dairy down the street that they're proposing to pull the water in.
Sir?
Excuse me?
Your address, sir?
It's 209 Ranch Acres in Tulare. And together with my brothers, a couple sons, some nephews, we own and operate 4J Farms in the area. We're about a mile south of the proposed project, and we plan to supply manure to the Pixley Biogas Digester. I also sit on the Pixley Irrigation District Board. Our family has been farming and dairying in Tulare County since the early 1900s. And in those years since, we've always tried to produce the highest quality products for consumers while taking good care of our animals and the land. We've consistently updated our equipment and methods to take advantage of new technology, be as clean and as efficient as possible. Like many farms and dairymen in the area, we've looked into anaerobic digestion as a way to manage our manure better, manage it better, reduce manure odors, protect water quality. We've heard a lot of talk about digesters, but very few projects have actually been constructed. When Calgren approached us about the Pixley Biogas Digester and said they were willing to take the financial risk on a local project that would benefit our dairy, we were very interested. And we really believe digester projects like this one are very important to the future Tulare dairies. First of all, digesters help with manure handling, and as I mentioned before. Digesters kill weed seeds and insect larvae in manure. They reduce manure solids and fecal coliform levels. On our farm, we'll be able to reduce the frequency of lagoon cleanouts, increase our storage capacity, and better manage our manure nutrients. Also, digesters make it easier for us to comply with the increasing air and water quality regulations that impact our business. Finally, digesters create the opportunity to create new products and new revenue streams from the dairy industry. We believe the Pixley Biogas Digester will benefit our farm in many ways, and hopefully a successful multi-farm project will open the door to more digesters on more Tulare County dairies. I'm here today to ask to support the digester for construction as soon as possible. We've been working with Calgren for over a year as they slowly move through the permitting process. If a large industrial plant like Calgren can't get a cow manure digester built in the middle of, one of the biggest dairy areas in the country, with all the money and time they put into this project, then how can an average Tulare County dairy farmer ever hope to build one? If this project succeeds, it will prove that digesters are viable in Tulare County. If the project dies now after going through all the environmental steps so far, it will be even harder to convince farmers to install the beneficial technology in the future. And I thank you for your support of the Pixley Biogas Project and the benefits to Tulare dairies. And I thank you.
Mr. Junio?
Questions?
Mr. Junio, do you, now you're going to be receiving the treated water, I suppose. I don't know if it's called treated, but the processed water.
Processed water back.
After it goes through the digester. Do you know the quality of that
well,
how that, because you're going to be applying that back onto your farmland again.
Uh-huh. Yes, we've discussed that, and it has to meet has to be as good or better than anything that we sent to them as far as the needs, and it has to, we've talked about it, but it has to be, the nutrients have to meet our needs. Anything above it, we'd have to work on it, but it's supposed to be, like I said, as good or better than as it left the farm. And we plan on using the byproduct that you talked about. Right now, we currently bed our cows with sand. We'll replace that sand with this bedding coming back, so that would be a big savings.
Okay. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I know there's manure coming from all over the place and going into this process, and we don't know exactly what's in all that manure when it gets here exactly. You're receiving that processed water, so I don't know if there was going to be some means to make sure that we're not putting something on the soils here that probably shouldn't be out there.
No, there's going to be testing. I mean, they can respond to that too. They're going to test the water coming out. Maybe he can respond to that a little better.
Respond to that. As part of the mitigation from the programmatic EIR, excuse me, Craig Hartman, project engineer, 1150 North Chenoweth, Visalia, California. As part of the permit, we have to go through a waste management plan, a nutrient management plan, and a monitoring and reporting plan, and some other plans. But the nutrient management plan and the monitoring and reporting plan are kind of like an accounting system. And so we have to continually, measure what the constituents of the wastewater put into the proposed pond at Junio's and make sure that we can have room to apply. And, we watch that over a year. And so that's how we know how much we can put into the digester. And we've done, tons of analysis to verify that this is going to be okay, because we're taking a risk to go through this. The 4-H dairy farm, the reason they're such a good candidate is they have more acreage than they need right now to dairy, and so they have to go buy nutrients, either in a chemical form or other manure to import into their facility right now. And with this project, they won't have to do that anymore, and we'll continually keep an audit and produce that for the water board as part of our permit.
So what you're saying, they're going to get more nutrients back in that processed water than they deliver when they pump it from there?
Correct, but instead of 4J having to supplement their farming operation with outside sources, they'll just get exactly what they need coming into the pond. And so there are studies and all kinds of documentation to show what these rates are and how much. And so we'll watch it on a continual basis, and there will be risk and safety factors to make sure that we're not increasing groundwater water pollution. And that will be regulated by the water board heavily as part of our waste discharge requirement.
I have a question on that, Mr. Hartman. How much water is going to be leaving that facility every day back to the farm?
That's probably a good question for Daryl. Approximately 100,000 gallons a day. It's a little less, I think.
And so is there a basis, is there someone or something to, you're ready to hold that water if that water does not test that it can go back to 4J Farms? Is there a plan for you to be able to collect all that water?
Sure is. Let me, well, it's kind of small, but I think I can explain it. So right now we have the flush barn, or excuse me, the freestall corrals right here. Those are flushed periodically, and the barn water heads south. Sorry, the mouse isn't working.
So you're still going to send it over there, but you're not going to use it for crops. You're going to use it as flushing or something else.
Yeah, so the water goes from the flush lanes into, right now, into a pit that is connected to their wastewater ponds. Okay, we're going to have that system go into the hexagon right above or adjacent to that, and that's what we call a suspension pit. And the reason we have that is to agitate everything and to force it down to the Calgren, or excuse me, the Pixley biogas facility. But if for some reason that doesn't work, there will be an overflow that it can flow back into the existing system, and that capacity, you know, is already adequate per the water board existing general order. And so from there, the hexagon, we're going to force it down to our site, and then we'll be mixing it with other solids. And I'm not sure if we described in depth what those solids are, but I'm not sure if you guys know what a slope screen separator, mechanical separator on a dairy is, back end of a dairy. Well, we're going to be getting those solids and trucking those into our facility. Right now, the contracted, or the folks that we are talking to, they are actually west of Junio's Dairy. And so, and on the bottom photo here, you can kind of see the land that we were intending to apply the waste from. And if I can get the mouse to work, here we go. Here's the location of the new proposed pond. Okay, the proposed pond, it will be also based upon the programmatic AR standard, and it is a Tier 1 double-lined pond, and it is built with a 50% safety factor for capacity and size. And we've gone through the analysis with the water board already to ensure that this system will work.
So that's enough capacity to hold it through the winter when you're not discharging onto the fields?
Yeah, the general order requires you to not apply water for a 120-day period, which lasts from the 1st of November to the end of February, because the plants, you know, the tendency is that they don't absorb the constituents or the nutrients during that time period. And also, if we get, you know, rain after you apply, the pressure of the rain could push the nutrients further into the soil and contaminate. And so the water board, through the general order, which the dairy is currently in, requires 120-day retention time. And so our pond will serve 120-day retention time. And that will include all the other liquids that will be put into the plant, and also the washing of the trucks and so forth.
Are those trucks covered? The solids trucks that are kind of going to come from the other dairies?
That's a good question. Right now, they're just going to be, you know, typical farm trucks that you know, manure is moved throughout our county all day. I mean, there are many trucks that I've been in meetings in Lyle's office, and I can look out the window, and there's commodity trucks and manure trucks that overpass Road 120 all day. I mean, we're adjacent to an agriculture facility that spreads manure, takes trucks that are open, that throws it in the air, as part of the nutrient application process. So we don't plan on requiring that.
But if you followed those trucks, you also know that a lot of times that manure goes other places.
True.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you. I'm going to take a 5-minute bio break at this point, and we'll continue with our, I'm going to close public testimony for 5 minutes. Be back in 11:15.
Good morning.
June 8th, Tulare County Planning Commission is now reconvened. So we'll continue. I will open the public testimony again. We were discussing with the applicants the details of the project. Are there any other public that are in support of this project that would like to speak? I'm sorry? Both ways. Okay, well, then why don't you lead off, and we'll go from there. Can we have your name and address, please?
My name is Betty Moorhead, and I'm a 35-year resident of Pixley, and my address is 1249 North Elm in Pixley. And I have something I want the commissioners to have, if they... I apologize, and I hope I haven't been distracting standing in the back. I'm being treated for a cervical herniated disc, and I'm not supposed to be sitting. Okay. I grew up in Tulare, and I've lived in Pixley for 35 years after graduating from Fresno State and marrying a farmer. And I currently serve on the Pixley Union School District Board as clerk, and I'm also the vice chair of the Pixley Chamber of Commerce. I write community development grants for the Pixley Foundation, and I'm also active in my local church. And I'm here on several fronts, and most focused is the community of Pixley. In regards to the project in general, this is a personal comment, and I would like to say that I think it's important that we take seriously the opportunities for renewable energy. We live in a world where energy is going to become scarce, and we are to be good stewards and to do the best we can in that realm. And so I do give credit to the project they've pursued, the time they're putting in on it, and if some things can be resolved, it may be a fit. I don't know. I know there's a lot of concerns out there. And now I will kind of change hats a little bit and speak a little bit about the Pixley community. For whatever reasons, communications on this project were not forthcoming to the members of the general community. We became aware of this over the weekend. I sympathize with you about reading the documents. I received the entire, however many, 400 pages it is. I've had it less than 24 hours, so it was a long night. But I also want to say in regards to Calgren, the Pixley community has had an excellent relationship with them. Most recently, the Chamber of Commerce and Calgren, we worked on a feature booth at the fair together to educate the community about ethanol. And when Calgren came to the Pixley community with the ethanol plant, they made numerous presentations to the Pixley Town Council and to the general Pixley community, and we've always had a good working relationship. We hope for that to stay. And in that turn, for whatever reason, there was a communication breakdown. It was disappointing that in the same realm as they came to us with the ethanol plant, it would have been nice for us to have been on the upside and starting blocks of this and understand it as a community. It's been, it's just been an unfortunate circumstance, but there are some serious concerns that we do have. And you were given 2 documents, and one of them actually was addressed by the owner in terms of prevailing winds. And if you look at the black and white map, what this is years ago when they put the Sunkist plant in Tipton, and they got it up and running, there was a horrible stench that came from that plant. And they didn't anticipate it, and it took them a long time to figure out how to, the term today is mitigate it. The people of Tipton, very few of those people were affected by that plant. Most of the people on the west side of 99 were not affected by that plant. But if you look at the red line from Tipton, and you'll see it goes down to the area of Avenue 120 to the south, and it ran from a northwest flow of wind, the prevailing wind in our area. And those people literally could not go outside their homes during that time. And a lot of that was during the summer. There was, some people there that raised horses, and it was almost unbearable to go out and even work the animals. And, Sunkist, yes, finally did resolve it, but it took a long time. And then as I was looking at this and thinking about this, you'll see the lower left line, red line going down. The top is where the plant is located. And following a parallel line of that northwest prevailing wind, you will see that that prevailing wind is going to go dead center through the heart of the community of Pixley. And I've been very troubled by some of the documents. I read them all. Don't see real well today, but I read them all last night. And continually, there was an absence of the reference of a concentration of population in excess of 3,000 people. Now, how can that not be on your radar? And even to the degree in one of the documents, in the biological resources assessment, it gives a very detailed description of the area. It's on page 4 of the biological, I know there's like hundreds of pages. Gives a very detailed description of what is south of that plant. And they're all wonderful animals. And the term is used to evaluate if there's any special status species that occur here. I think as people, we would like to be included in that. But the part that troubled me was the second paragraph, first, the area within approximately 2 square miles to the southwest of the site was also evaluated. The entire region is in row crops, orchards, dairies, scattered industrial, and relatively few non-orchard trees. There's 2 statements there that bring concern. One is they looked at 2 miles southwest, but for some reason, why they didn't look 2 miles southeast, and there is Pixley. There sit 3,000 people. Children, grandparents, parents, workers. I just don't know, how could that be missed? I hope it's not deliberate. I really do. Because, again, we have a good history with Calgren, and I don't think that would be their intent. But it gives me concern that some of these documents are not exhaustive. And the odor thing has been downplayed. There's a comment in one of the documents that says, these people live by dairies anyway, they're used to it. That's not true. And Tulare County is the dairy capital of the world. Tulare is the dairy processing capital of the world. But if you would look at a county map, you will see the majority of these dairies relocated to the Pixley area. And it has been a major transition. We've learned to live with each other. We've become partners. We have farmed adjacent to 4J Farms. We've worked with them forever. We're all in this together. We all want really good things. But we can't ignore things that are right there that obviously have not been addressed. And to say that, to write off that, there's lots of dairy, so what's a little more smell? Well, the transportation address on that is trying to compare it that these trucks are being taken off the road, and so there's really no transportation impact, except if you're familiar with how the farms use the dairy waste, that happens about 2 times a year, and it's a very intense period, and we're talking about these trucks are on the road all the time, 12 to 14, we've gone from 6 to 10 trucks, the documents say 10 to 12 trucks, so that's 24 passes of trucks much like Nancy said, is if you've ever been behind one of them, I am concerned that maybe the others aren't covered, but so we just keep doing things wrong. And since this is an increased use, a constant use in all weather conditions, I think we need to think about that. We've now got these trucks out a lot. That overpass is a little edgy coming into California Dairies because their trucks are turned in. They've tried to make more of a bypass, get them off the road because people come off the overpass, and boom, there's a truck waiting to turn in. I have the same concern about the trucks on the road into here. That's a really narrow road. There is room for them to make a bypass entry, and that does need to be seriously considered. I am on the school board. That is also a school bus route. And so, again, we have concerns. We're going to have this increased truck traffic, which is fine. It's part of farming. We farm. And we know all about trucks, and we know all about moving equipment and how that thing works. But you still do everything to the advantage of safety, and especially when you're talking about the safety of multiple children that we've put on a school bus in a concentrated area. And again, I don't know where the communication gap fell for the community. I think some of it could be on our part. Some of these legal documents come through, and I'm not sure people always know what they are. The county has usually been very good about bringing these kinds of things to Pixley themselves, because we do have a very active town council, and we're in constant communication with the county. So for that, I have regret in that area. And then I just had concern in the addendum that you may or may not have read yet. There's just a lot of iffy terms of minimal reduces are not expected to be in any event. And I thought, so maybe this is a cutting edge technology, this is new, but now I'm hearing there's hundreds of these, and we don't seem to have verifiable data on some of these questions. I'm just wondering why some of them are so, and then there's a discrepancy on one page that talks about the manure that's first brought in is a 24-hour window, but there's on another page where it talks about it has to be put in within 48 hours. Now, these are our sources of odor, and one of the tanks they're going to cover was talking about a tarp. Well, okay, we'll see how that goes in weather and, how they last, but, we just need to answer the hard questions. And I don't know if they were deliberately avoided or not, but the community supports these kinds of things. But we can't ride them on our back to something that we can't change. And it's unfair. And how would you like it if this was at the entrance to Visalia or Tulare or any other, Porterville or wherever, and after a while people say, oh yeah, you're in Tulare because you can, smell that plant. It's just like, I know when I pass Goshen and I can smell the grain. We know when they're unloading the grain cars on the rail there in Pixley, but that's not, and, just because we're small doesn't mean we don't deserve that same quality of life that other communities get to afford. You are our legislative body. That's all unincorporated communities have. We count on the county to have our back and to be our advocate. And, there's other specifics, but I think this gives the core of what's going on. One other concern that has come up, and it has to do with the change of the farming climate in Pixley, and that is, they mentioned there's very few trees except the ones in orchards. Those are almond orchards, or they're pistachios, for human consumption. We have to really protect them against contamination from manure, water runoff from manure, because if we have a salmonella outbreak, we will lose 2 industries in this county. And the almond industry and the pistachio industry is growing by leaps and bounds in this county and is really going to bring your ag income numbers up. But if we have a salmonella outbreak because of mismanagement of manure, we're going to be in a lot of trouble because both industries will be at risk. So, anyway, thank you. Any questions?
I had a question. You said that the community of Pixley, I guess it was the Sunkist operation you're talking about, they found
Right,
that,
it's right there on Highway 190.
yeah, you found
Avenue
that they considered that unbearable, that stench.
Oh, it was horrible. We lived farther into Pixley, and we could smell it. The people out at 120, it was knocked in. Well, Nancy kind of lives out there. It was knock you down smell.
Okay, my question is, the people that live in Pixley, and you said this is becoming sort of a dairy area in here.
Oh, it's huge.
Do they consider the stench of dairies unbearable?
Because they're not in town. The dairies cannot be located within a certain
But do you
sphere.
smell dairies in Pixley?
No, very seldom.
Well, that was my
No.
question.
Yeah, in that concentrate, we actually live on the edge of that. We live about a half a mile out of the main part of town on our farm. But we essentially are in the community.
And so this plant would be right in this community area?
Right, and this colored map, I'm sorry, I meant to mention this. What this shows is the plant is up here, and these circles are all concentrated areas of people living. We have this down here where it's actually the community, but there are some really large concentrations of dwellings. And I'm used to mapping them because I do all our maps for our agriculture. And I have to identify every house matters. When you are doing chemical applications or you're doing anything, I have to map every single dwelling that is within our range. So just to say we're looking at the concentration of 3,000 people, there's probably another 500 or 600 that are in that range from the plant before you get into Pixley. But it's less than 2 miles. And when you have a prevailing wind, it's that fast.
So there just happens not to be any dairies out there in those clusters of population north of Pixley?
Right, mainly because the dairies need such large land parcels, and those are smaller, and some of them are in that urban area boundary and the redevelopment rounds, and they're not eligible for that. But a lot of it had to do, dairies went out and bought mostly sections and, large parcels. And so the dairies, actually 4J is probably one of the closest dairies that's in there. The dairies are not sitting on top of that community. And the smell, we've gotten some fly residual, and I have a concern about these being uncovered, and that we have not gotten the smell. And to me, it's not, everything has its smell, and we have seasons of things where, there's more during harvest season, there's more equipment on the road, but it's a season and it's short-lived. This is 12 months out of the year. It's different,
When I drive down that road all the time, 99, and I remember when CDI came in. Did that smell hit Pixley? That was awfully strong.
Not a lot. Well,
why not?
They did some mitigation with those ponds
afterwards.
and things.
I mean, there was about a 4-year period where
when it first started.
Absolutely.
Yes, it did. But again, they were able. So it's just evidence. Whatever happens, the 99 corridor runs with the wind for whatever reason in that section, and so whatever goes on that freeway, if it's not well maintained, we know it, and we know it really quick, and it's very strong. Like I said, we know when they unload the grain carts on the side rail. It's that smell of the corn and stuff, but it's not a bad smell. Yeah,
my point was when CDI had that problem, they did something to correct it.
Yes.
It would seem like they could do the same here, or...
Well, I guess my concern, though, is because I noticed it odor management plan isn't required till they apply for their building permit. And I thought, well, why isn't it required up front? I'm clear on that. I mean, why? Because then, to me, you know, sometimes we've all been there. You're so far down the road. Well, what the heck, you know? And I don't know if that's I don't know if that came from the county or from the negotiations. I don't know. I'm not embedded in the project in that way. But it did surprise me that the odor management plan is not required till they're ready to pull the building permit, which means they have all the other things. And that's fine, but we don't want post-fact. We've lived that twice now. Why does it have to be that way? If we know that these exist places, we can go up to them and visit them and probably figure out what's going on. That's what I'm confused about. If there's so many out there, there's got to be data and technology. Where is it?
Well, that's why I asked the question earlier of Darrell Moss. There are 57 digesters in the United States. Surely there are some standards for construction. I don't think anyone, my opinion, is purposely avoiding something within these permits. There's too much data here for people to have purposely tried to escape from something. It may be that there was an oversight in covering your concern for odor management, but it may be there.
Right.
You know, we don't know.
Well, and it's, you know, our primary concern is odor management. We also are concerned about those additional trucks on the road 12 months out of the year uncovered, and just the debris just goes on. If you don't want to drive behind one, you know. So, and in summer months, it's really interesting when it's nice and hot. So
I'm curious, the processing plant at Sunkist, how was the mitigation managed?
I think they worked on some ponds, and I think they even changed some of their process. I honestly don't know.
It doesn't have relevance to this, but I'm curious.
Yeah. But
Mr. Chair? Yes.
All right.
It went from bad to good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot of
Could you state your
comments
name
in
and address,
support
please?
of this project.
Could you state your name and address?
And they are, pardon?
Excuse me, could you state your name and address?
I will.
But you need to speak before you speak.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. I'm Louise Rambeau, a Pixley resident since 1942. My address is Post Office Box 413. And I am a member of the Pixley Town Council, but I am not speaking for the Town Council. I am speaking as a resident of our community. I'm a retired teacher. I belong to the Women's Club. I belong to the VIP unit for the Sheriff's Department. I'm a member of Chamber of Commerce, and I'm active in my church in Pixley. I did not have the slightest inkling of what was being planned for Pixley until last Friday, when I was called to ask why the town council had not submitted a response to the proposed project. In a state of shock, I began making phone calls. Everyone couldn't believe that a manure digester was being planned to be located a bit more than a mile north of my home, which is on the north edge of the Pixley residences, and of course in the path of the northwest prevailing winds through Pixley, which are in evidence most of the time. We checked the minutes of our town council meetings and determined that we had not received any information on the project. Since that time, last Friday, I have talked to probably more than 24 residents, with each of them adamantly opposed to the building of the plant. The storage slab, the storage, the holding tank, and the mixing pit, and the effluent pit are all open-air installations, according to the map that was on the presentation. Plus, the 12 truckloads of manure arriving each day will produce huge amounts of manure dust, manure odors, and aerosol. On page 3 of the document, I quote, that although the proposal has the potential to produce significant environmental impacts, there will not be significant impacts because of the mitigation measures agreed to by the applicant. And there are several lists of measures to cope with the environmental impacting on page 8. One example is, quote, to prevent odors during unloading, unquote. How can you possibly promise that no odors will be there when you are dumping manure from a truck to a storage slab? And they mention it being wet. Well, perhaps at times it is wet. By the time it gets loaded and transported and is in the corral, as it comes out onto our fields, you see it is dry. I'm sure that not many of you live in a community that has no power of authority over decisions that are made for it. Pixley is a hardworking, concerned citizenry and is exceedingly unhappy and even angry about your lack of concern for our well-being and asking us to be content with constant dust problems, extremely unpleasant odors and particulates in our air 365 days a year for the rest of our lives. You must allow us to make our residents aware of what is about to happen. We will offer, in addition to our meeting, a town meeting and present the results to you. When the Calgren plant approached Pixley to put their plant in place, the owner appeared before the town council, and then a town meeting was arranged at which he was present to answer any questions that were given to him. Calgren entered into a good relationship with Pixley, and part of it was due to everyone knowing what the situation was. We have not had any contact until Friday night concerning the manure digester. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many other in the public out there are wanting to speak? Can I see a show of hands? Is there a representative for some of you? Are you all going to come up? Can I get just one of you to come up for a position here? Can someone? So then let's get someone up here, please. We want different views here, not the same view. So if you've got something different to add.
Okay. My name is Manuel Azevedo, and I'm here on behalf of CDI.
Your address?
My address is 11894 Avenue 120, the physical address of the facility.
And the reason we ask for that is for the benefit of the public. This session is recorded, and it's very difficult if we have to go back and listen to testimony. We don't know who's speaking, so that's why we ask for name and address. Thank you.
I realize that. Basically, we are a responsible company. Like the lady before me stated, we had some problems. We got them corrected. And we've been a good neighbor to everyone, including the farmers. It sounds like I'm up here on behalf of this digester, and we're in the dairy business. I've been in dairy business personally for over 40 years. I've been at the Tipton facility since '95 when right after it first started, and I was responsible for that facility until today. We employ 120 people approximately, and they all make good money. They all make excellent wage, and they all contribute to Tulare County. We contribute to Tulare County. We're concerned, a couple of things, and they were mentioned here, the air quality. We're really concerned about water quality. We have our own supply of water, and I'll make this brief, is that we cannot jeopardize a $250 million plant because we can't get water. Our water is very important to us, and we will stress that. We cannot afford to have anything go wrong with our wells. The other thing is, and Ms. Moorhead touched on it pretty good, is the trucking. And the trucking, we all know, I am a farmer part-time. I have my own place. I realize what manure is. If it's dry, we spread it once a year, we're done. It's not 24 hours, 7 days a week, 364 days a year, transporting down open public roads. One concern that nobody touched on is the problems or the issues that arrive from tankers going down that road and coming into our facility. Our bays are constantly sanitized 2 times per day for that reason. We do not want any pathogens or anything coming into our facility. We have people that go around and they clean our bays, sanitize our bays, foam them down, and wash them. We cannot afford to have anything come into our milk processing facility. On the air side, we actually have some filtration of big dryers. The intakes of those dryers were set east for a reason. They were set east for the prevailing winds being from the west or northwest. We do not pick up dust, particulate, especially in the fall when they're doing harvesting. That's critical for us. We spend thousands of dollars every month to keep that air clean going through our dryers. I can't emphasize that enough, is that we need clean air. We went through a learning curve. We built that plant out there. Most of our facilities, and we have 6 of them, are in incorporated areas. This is the only one that's out incorporated area. We've had challenges, a lot of them. We've addressed them. We have continued on. We are talking about a digester here that will probably help 4 or 5 dairies. We have 500. And we service a lot of dairies from Kern to Fresno, Kings, Tulare. We affect a lot of people in this facility. We process 9 million pounds a day of milk. That's quite a bit substantial there. We can do 150 loads a day. These people, and I'll be real up front with you, I've been there all this time. I have never laid anyone off. It's a steady business, steady income for everyone, and we don't want to jeopardize that. In that, like I said, I'm going to keep it short. Digester is a good thing if it's put in the right spot. Not next to a small community, not to a food processing plant. We constantly monitor yeast, mold, salmonella, listeria, anything that kill you, kill the public, and we all know we don't want to do that. With that, I will turn over to Mr. Chris Campbell, and he'll address some of his concerns. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions? Anyone? Thank you.
Let's continue along, please.
Good morning. Christopher Campbell, 5260 North Palm Avenue, Fresno, California. I'm an attorney for California Dairies. I do their environmental compliance work. As you might imagine, they have a lot of environmental issues that they have to deal with directly. We agree that this is a model project. We agree that digesters can be very helpful for the dairy industry. They hold a lot of promise, and we agree that they will help clean up the air when they're done right. Because it's a model project, it's really important to be done right, because it is a precedent, and if this doesn't work out, becomes a problem, other folks that are thinking of doing digesters will probably be dissuaded from doing that. So it's very important to get this right. Clearly, as Mr. Schleier discussed, this is pushed by the grant process of the California Energy Commission. As a result, what is a very complicated process has been compressed, and because of the time constraints, mistakes have been made. What we're asking this commission to do is to slow it down so that it can be done right. There are 9 digesters in California, but this is an off-site digester. It's a different sort of approach, and we need to understand it before we go forward. The applicant discussed the Waterboard programmatic EIR that has been certified. They did not mention that the tentative order to implement the mitigation measures for that EIR is on the agenda for the Water Board later this week. That's the Water Board meeting Thursday and Friday. They're going to be discussing that tentative order. So this is new, and we want to make sure that the standards and the mitigation for the first digester are really considered properly so they work. They also said that they're, actually your consultant from Michael Brannaman's Associates stated that they're proposing to work with the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District to work out air pollution standards for these. That's good, and it's very important to work out uniform air pollution standards. Hopefully, once the first digester is done properly and all the uniform standards are applied to it, then others can go forward relatively quickly. But those air quality standards are not in place yet, and therefore we believe it's premature to go ahead and approve the project and go forward and experiment on the people of Pixley or the CDI next door. The other thing about rushing the project is while the consultant, Michael Brannaman, has responded to all the comments, he didn't have much time to do it. Brannaman Associates, a very good firm. I'm a planning and attorney, so I work with Brannaman a lot. I'm not knocking the firm at all. I think you've hired good folks, but you can only do so much with the time. The important thing to stay focused on is the legal requirement for certifying a mitigated negative deck is that there's not a fair argument. A fair argument does not exist that the proposed project may have a significant adverse impact on the existing physical environment. That's the charge which your counsel, I'm sure, will explain to you. But the point is, if you're not going to do a full environmental impact report to really analyze the project and give all that information to the public, the burden's on the approving agency and the staff to show that there is not a fair argument that there could be or may be an adverse environmental effect. I think from the testimony you've heard today, there's very clearly a fair argument that there may be an adverse environmental effect that needs to be looked into. The responses to the comments are more appropriate to responses to comments for a full EIR. And as I said, they did not have much time because of the compressed time frame, they didn't have much time to look at it. But for instance, and I'll just go through a couple to give the example. The commenter describes a hypothetical scenario of a manure truck overturning while making a turn. Well, that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about what the commissioner is talking about, that with uncovered trucks with wet manure, they're going to be slopping onto the road. And that's going to happen every single day. So it's not a hypothetical situation. The responses also said that the commenter, CDI, has not provided facts to prove or to support a contention. Well, the obligation is on the preparers of the mitigated negative deck to show that there's not a problem, because the comment period and the public review is so compressed, and the amount of information that's given to the public in a mitigated negative deck is so much less than you get in an environmental impact report. The public doesn't have the obligation to prove that there will be an impact because we don't have the time, we don't have the information to do that. That's not the legal standard. And finally, in response to our comment 10, they state that the CDI facility is already exposed to odors, aerosols from various sources, and it seems unlikely that these will make it much worse. Well, once again, that's not the legal standard. The County of Madera recently approved the Madera Quarry, and looking at the noise impacts, they said, well, the Highway 41 already has a noise level that exceeds the current standards, and the additional gravel trucks from the quarry would only increase it by 1.5 decibels. Therefore, it's not a problem. Well, the appellate court disagreed and said, if you're already exceeding it, saying, well, it's already bad, so this only makes it a little worse, doesn't meet the legal standard. That's essentially what these responses have said over and over again. It's already smelly. There are already problems. CDI is already dealing with those problems. And this will only make it a little worse, maybe. But we don't really know how much worse because we haven't quantified it. That's not the legal standard. The legal standard is if there's a problem that's created by this facility, it has to be mitigated. And with the information in front of us, we're not able to determine, and I submit that you're not able to determine, do you really know that the mitigation is in place to prevent the problem because of the limited amount of information you get with a mitigated negative deck. So we ask that you defer this. We think it should go through a full EIR so that everyone really knows what's going on, that the model project is approved through a model process, and it helps create a good standard for these digesters that ultimately will probably be very helpful for Tulare County air quality and the Tulare County dairy industry. But rushing this through is not going to be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many more are going to speak? Going to see show of hands. Is it different than what was just spoken? Thank you.
I know it's getting long and late. My name is Terry Schrepfer. I'm with the firm Provo and Pritchard Consulting Group in Bakersfield, 1800 30th Street. I'm here representing California Dairies. Just a little background on myself. I was born and raised here in Visalia on a dairy farm. I know what it's like to be around dairies. I've done a significant amount of work in that. I've got a Master's of Science in Sanitary Engineering from Berkeley. I've worked for about 35 years in the water and wastewater industry. I have personally designed wastewater treatment facilities. I've designed digesters. I've got a significant amount of experience in the field. My firm, Provo and Pritchard, has also designed digesters. In the course of my consulting business, I have done extensive studies on odor and odor control for facilities, wastewater treatment facilities across the country. And I think I know what I speak, and I've had a lot of course, personal experience. I'd like to also been working with California Dairies for the last 20 years on their Tipton plant, did most of the design work on their wastewater facilities. And one comment I'd like to make is that one of my charges when we worked for California Dairies was to not use an anaerobic digester facility because they have problems and they cause odors. California Dairies did not want that kind of a problem. We just got the response to comments back just late last night or late yesterday afternoon, and they are extensive. And we've had just a small amount of time to look through them. We think that the comments are, as the attorney stated, they were kind of done in a rush. There's a lot of misinformation, I think, and a lot of additional analysis that could be done. And we would like very much to have the opportunity to respond to those comments, and we haven't had that. opportunity yet. The biggest focus, I think, is on this odor control from this digestion pit. It's uncontrolled. There are no mitigation measures proposed for either trucking in the manure solids or for the area where the manure solids are mixed in the digester pit. And quite frankly, they say it's a state-of-the-art facility. The digester part may be state-of-the-art, but the handling part of bringing the manure in and taking the manure out is not state-of-the-art. The standard for odor control in communities like Visalia, like Tulare, the communities that are upgrading their wastewater treatment plants that are within, a short distance of people, is to contain, scrub, and clean up the odors before they're discharged. We know that, digesters, we don't have any problem with the digester itself, but digesters get upset. We know that anaerobic decomposition occurs in force mains when manure sits in a pipeline and it's not being pumped continuously, and it sits there overnight, and then it's started up in the morning, and that big slug of waste comes into that mixing pit. It's going to be odorous, and it's going to cause problems. We also know that even though the prevailing wind conditions are northwesterly, that it's those few times of the year when we have a very stable sublayer atmospheric condition that allows the odors to sort of build up in still air, and then a small shift in the wind pushes it over towards either the community of Pixley or the California Dairy Facility or across the highway. It's those few times a year that we are concerned with. It's not the prevailing times. The comment said that in an abundance of caution, the initial study mitigated negative deck required an odor mitigation plan. I don't know that it's a abundance of caution. It seems like that plan ought to have been done ahead of time so that we had the opportunity to review that plan to determine if the mitigation for odors was adequate. We still don't know what that mitigation is going to be. The responder to our comments said that we have not provided facts to support this contention. We would like to have the opportunity to produce the facts. We do know that odors can be modeled. We do know that you can quantitatively evaluate the impact of odors on downwind neighbors. We know it's been done and can be done because I have done it myself personally. We have no standard. The only standard for odor is apparently the Air Board's nuisance standard. What that means is that you don't have anything that you can enforce until after a complaint occurs and a hearing is held, and that could take months. There's no enforceable standard that requires them to not let that nuisance happen in the first place. Once again, we are, as an engineer, a registered civil engineer, I like the concept of the dairy digester projects. It just needs to be done with additional mitigation, and then I think this can be a good project. And mitigation can come in a couple of different forms. One would be to relocate the project, or some of those portions of the project that are the most odorous portions of the project, or by taking those most odorous portions of the project, containing them, scrubbing them, and we'll be happy to listen to the proposed mitigation, but we want to know what that mitigation is now, not when they pull a building permit. We also don't seem to have any controls over how much manure is being brought into the facility except by the truckload count. I think that Tulare County ought to set a standard or a quantity, a tonnage, a pounds of solids kind of a basis. We also know that the project includes the potential for a couple of non-dairy type food process or food waste can be brought into the facility. What that is or where it's coming from or what kind of odors that might have is completely unknown, unstated. It's a big unknown. What's that going to be? With respect to aerosols, I know that when I drive in Tulare County and some of the rural roads, And if I'm behind a dairy manure truck or some of these green chop hay trucks, I get this mist of junk on my windshield. As soon as I get home, I have to wash my windshield. So we do know that there are aerosols there. Unfortunately, there are no standards for aerosols, but we know that it can affect a facility like California Dairies. I recently designed a wastewater pretreatment system for a cheese manufacturing facility up in Sonoma, and they had on site their own wastewater treatment system, and they made provisions for scrubbing and containing the odors off of an aerobic process because they were concerned how it might affect their own product. I'm going to stop because there are others that need to comment now, but just needless to say that we would like to have the opportunity to respond to the responses. We don't think that the conclusion of no significant impact is a valid conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. How many more are going to speak? I see a show of hands. 3 more? Right now, we'll limit this to just 2 or 3 minutes, please. Try to wrap this up.
My name is Ralph Friend. I'm one of the members of 3R Land and Development. There's 2 other members in 3R, which is my sister Rhonda Friend Hollis and my brother Russell Friend. 3R has been affiliated with this property. Our family owns about 270 acres directly west of the Calgren facility. You've all seen the maps, so I'm going to move through this real quick because a lot of the comments have already been made that I was going to make. Our family, the Friend family, settled on this property about 1920. We have been in the process of working towards a master planned ag and food industrial development on this 150-acre parcel since somewhere around 1990. We, in fact, the Friend family, was the permittee for Calgren. We understand clearly the process that Calgren had to go through in order to get that plant approved. We understand clearly the process that has been presented to us on the Pixley Biogas facility, and I can assure you that those processes do not mirror each other. Again, we have 270 acres that move to the west, and I want to clarify a couple of comments that I take offense to that Mr. Dwelly made to you on public record. Number one, he made the comment that we, in effect, solicited them to come onto our property for the Pixley Biogas facility. That, in fact, is not true. In April of 2010, I had a meeting to express, actually my wife Diane was in that meeting, to express our concern with the Pixley Biogas project going in at the site that they chose to put it in. We offered them suggestions to relocate that site on other parcels that surround our property that encompass about 640 total acres. That included the Hesse parcel, the DeGraff parcel, and the furthest southwest corner of our parcel, which is a mile from this facility. So that's to set the record straight. The second thing is that we did and do spread manure on our property just like most farmers do in our area. That is dried manure, came out of our feedlot and out of a dairyman's piles of manure in their pens. It's dry. You all understand, I'm sure, what the nature of that manure is. It's spread once a year, not 365 days out of the year. And it was also dissed upon spreading by the person that does commercial work for us at this time. The other thing that I want to stress here is that either I or our family has been involved in all but Sunkist project between Tipton and the Pixley corridor. A group of us were instrumental in the redevelopment of the Knutson plant in Tipton. We dug down 110 feet to remediate that facility from ground and groundwater contamination. We were instrumental in asking and helping in any way we could to bring California Dairies to this location that they're in today. Upon the request of J.D. Haskell and Company in the very beginning, we chose to work directly with the County of Tulare and the Pixley Town Council to try to get Calgren off the ground, which a very, very large concerted public effort achieved. The thing that I'm going to ask you all to do is, before you make a decision, I ask you to read word for word the North Pixley Commercial Industrial Specific Plan. That plan is joined at the hip of the Pixley Community Plan. Our family was directly involved, as many Pixley residents were at that time. That plan seems to be ignored in much of the documentation that you have in front of you, other than full compliance was made. That's why I'm going to ask you to read it and not have it summarized by the Tulare County staff. In closing, in all of my career, I have never had to contest a project in this county. This is a very unpleasant situation that we've been put into. A lot of people have worked to bring these manufacturing plants into this area and have taken great care to uphold the standards of that plan. And I just ask you to consider it before you make your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
I unfortunately have to leave. I have to excuse myself. I'm still, even if we listen to all the testimony, I'm not ready to vote on this today. And I am willing to come back on Friday or Monday. I leave it up to my fellow commissioners to what they want to do. And I'd like to comment that we are the approving agency for the specific plans for communities throughout Tulare. And so when they come up, we are required to read all those personally. And so I'm asking the staff to get me a copy of it. I don't know if we've adopted that plan or not, but I would like to have a copy of that before we meet again on this project. So I apologize, but I have to go. Thank you.
So noted. Could we continue, please?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Scott Cuney. My address is 1800 30th Street, Bakersfield, California. I'm here on behalf of 3R, and I have some additional materials for the Commission to consider. Could be added to the record, and it deals with some of these land use issues that I'd like to speak to here this afternoon. Now it's past noon. I do appreciate and agree with the Commission that none of us have been given fair opportunity to review all the materials, to evaluate them, and to make what is such a momentous decision, a precedent-setting decision with regard to a prototype, an experiment with regard to digesting. And I would suggest to you that that is, of course, your charge, and I know that from your comments, Mr. Chairman, that you take that very seriously, and as do we, and that's the nature of our comments. I want to focus on the land use planning issues. This Pixley community, by the way, I was born and raised in Tulare too. Seems like everyone is from this community. And I've spent a lot of time out on dairies myself, but the Pixley community is very unique. It's a very proactive, planned community. Not only do you have your primary county ordinance, but you have a Pixley community plan, and then you went further and you have a very detailed, specific plan, all of it designed with the goal of developing a cohesive industrial area that is fully compatible, that ensures compatibility of all of the uses in this zone. And this project is in the midst of that zone. Importantly, in the CEQA context, interference or conflict with land use plans and policies is a significant effect on the environment all to itself. And I would say in this instance, you have exactly that direct conflict with this project, not in its principled sense of a digester, but where it is located and how it is designed to be built and operated. There's the conflict. The staff has advised you conclusively, you heard it again today, that the ordinance and the plans have been satisfied. But what you won't see in the staff reports or in the narrative, if you review this record here this morning, an articulation of actually what those provisions provide in detail. They instead make this simplistic argument that because this digester is a biomass facility, and biomass facilities are an M1 industry, ergo that means that this is compliant with the ordinances and the plans. But let's really look at what the ordinance and the plans actually say. Your ordinance, 2714, says in part, and it prohibits any M1 industry to be located at this site if it, quote, is obnoxious or offensive by reason of emission of odor, dust, gas, or other similar causes. That's prohibited. Even though it be M1, it is prohibited in this area. Now, thankfully, we had some very good direct testimony here from some wonderful recipient witnesses. We had Mrs. Rambos and Mrs. Moorhead come before you to give you what you all know. Manure produces odors, manure transported produces dust, and manure is a gas. The whole thing is about gas. So we know that this project produces odors, dust, and gas. So now the question is it obnoxious and offensive? I think we all know the smelling of manure, notwithstanding that we all have been around dairies and live around dairies, I think it meets the definition. It's obnoxious and offensive. So that requires this project to either be located in a different place or planned and designed so as to prohibit any obnoxious or offensive odors. If we look at the community plan, it is very specific too, and it says, quote, all new commercial uses shall be designed in such manner that will minimize land use compatibility problems with surrounding and planned land uses, quote. It's mandatory, shall be, has to be done. It has to be designed that way. It's a requirement. The specific plan likewise says, and this is another quote, development within the specific plan area shall be compatible and complementary to the Pixley community, quote. And then it gives us a definition of compatibility. That's helpful here. Compatibility means, quote, adjacent land uses are capable of existing in agreeable combination, quote. Now you've heard the testimony from CDI. They've got a $100 million project that produces cheese, butter, and other products, and they are very concerned that the odor, the gas, the dust from this facility will contaminate their food processing. Food processing is planned at 3R lands directly adjacent to this facility to the west. It is incumbent on this commission that this facility be proven to you to be compatible. It is the burden of the initial study and the mitigated negative deck to prove affirmatively that the standard has been met. And what you will find is they don't even talk about obnoxious and offensive odors. They don't talk about the compatibility standard. They simply tell you, well, it's an M1 use. It's got to be compatible. They have to show it, and they haven't done the study to do that. And so we would say for all of those reasons that you just don't have the information in front of you to meet this standard that is being asked of you, the precedent standard of a prototype facility that can prove to not only the Pixley community, to Tulare County, but the state, the regional board, that in fact this facility will not be incompatible with this enclave uniformly designed community area. For that reason, we would suggest that you must reject the proposal for the mitigated native deck and really suggest that what you need is more information. You need a full-blown EIR to advise you so you can make a good decision. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. How many more are going to speak? Is that it? Last one? Thank you. This will be our last public testimony.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Moss. I'm a consultant, professional engineer with Provo and Pritchard Consulting Group, 130 North Garden in Visalia. And I'll be brief. I just kind of wanted to help, at least in my mind, boil this down into the decisions that you're being forced to make here today. You have been put in what I would believe to be as an untenable position of having to make a decision that is on a very compressed timeline with a minimal of information. And it's an important decision, as has been stated before. This project has been rushed, quite frankly, through the environmental process with minimum public opportunity to comment. The very minimum, in fact, we believe to be less than minimum. This is the only public hearing that this project is going to have. And again, that's the untenable nature of the situation you've been put in. The most significant neighbor on this project is CDI, and they have very significant concerns. They were not made aware of this project by the proponents ever. Only through the process of public notification did they become aware of the project. And that to me is just, it's hard to explain. The project in and of itself obviously is not economically viable. It needs a $4.5 million grant in order to be built. The economy generated by this project is the construction costs. That's it. All of the benefits of this project in terms of the economic output from it, the value of the gas produced, goes to one entity, Calgary Renewable Fuels. That's it. Doesn't go anywhere else. Contrast that against California Dairies. Here we have a $250 million investment. I asked Manuel earlier, give me an estimate of what it annually produces in terms of economic value. He wasn't sure. He estimated something in excess of hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars, in terms of the economic value of that output from that processing plant. $250 million investment, hundreds of millions of dollars of economic output. Yet we have, so you have a contrast here, a significant contrast. One of a project that generates really no economic value of any significance to the county versus another project that has huge economic and job impacts, 120 jobs, and huge economic impact. Even if the risk is small, is very small, that this project could cause upset to CDI, you have to weigh the potential value or the potential impacts of that risk against the potential benefits of the project. And you can't come to any other conclusion than we need more information to make sure, as this body, that there aren't any impacts to the neighbors, and in particular to CDI from an economic standpoint. And again, you've been put in a tough situation, and that's unfortunate. But again, a project that, quite frankly, doesn't pencil without a significant investment from the state versus an existing program, existing project that generates hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. You don't want to be in the position of putting any of that in risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With that being the conclusion of public testimony, before I close testimony, do any of my fellow commissioners have any comments to any of the public that has spoken so far?
Unless there's a rebuttal.
So I'm going to ask the applicant and/or his representatives if there's any further comment or rebuttal. You may take this opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate this has been a long hearing, and we'll try to make this very, very brief. I'd like to thank Ms. Moorhead and Ms. Rambos for the kind comments about the facility. And I want to make sure that they get my card before I leave here today, so they know who to call if there's some concerns about the facility. It certainly was not our intention to rush things through so that the community didn't have a chance to respond. Both of them are correct. We've tried very, very hard to be good neighbors. And as soon as we heard of concerns from CDI, and perhaps that's our fault for not notifying them, if so, shame on us. But we went over and visited them immediately. I think we're losing sight of one thing here. The one overarching comment I would make is that digesters clean up emissions from dairies. The dominant dairy that we're servicing here is 4J. 4J is closer to the community of Pixley than we are. They're about a mile south, and they're just across Road 120. So not exactly directly south. They're perhaps a little bit more westerly, so that the prevailing breeze would take odor from their currently, those waste lagoons are anaerobic digesters. We're just trying to capture that and trying to do it more efficiently and get all of the biogas out. I've heard concerns about salmonella. We kill salmonella in the digester. It comes out essentially pathogen-free. Otherwise, Mr. Junio wouldn't be willing to use it as bedding for his cows. We've heard the comment that there's a dearth of information from other digesters, that all this noxious stuff hasn't been studied. Gosh, my digester expert is here, but what I understand is that's because they're not noxious. They're not a major problem. One of the Provost and Pritchard fellows mentioned that digesters were one of the alternatives for CDI to clean up their wastewater issues. And we chose carefully when we chose this digester. It's a modified plug flow. As Darrell Moss has indicated, they haven't had problems with these. Some of those mixed tank digesters, yeah, they're very, very popular in Europe. There's lots of them in Europe, but they've had a few problems. We want to go with something that isn't a problem. We want to be good neighbors. But someplace along the line, you have to get started. It's a very good project. It's a marriage of our industrial needs and the dairy's needs. Frankly, I'm sorry for the short time period here. I do believe that the California Energy Commission overlooked. I think they're used to doing R&D grants. They overlooked the fact that probably the CEQA stuff should have been done on the front end, not the back end. But nonetheless, we find ourselves where we are today. One of the reasons that we endorsed, staff came to us and said, you're going to have to pay for this study. We'll hire the guy, but you're going to have to pay for it. We said, fine. And we agreed to do it as comprehensively as possible. This is a big document. The reason you haven't read everything is there's a lot to read, folks. It's exhaustive. How much more are we going to do? If we kill this project because timing or whatever, and as Mr. Chairman mentioned earlier, I believe we can buy some more time with California Energy Commission, but not another month. They lose that last round of funding. We'd like to see this go forward. In a way, I sat there in the audience and I feel tugged a little bit. CDI says, don't put it that close to us. Put it further away. The residents of Pixley say, don't put it that close to us. Put it further away. One of them south of us, one of them's north of us. Folks, as Mr. Dwelly said, it's a sense of not in my backyard. Nobody wants these. These aren't experimental digesters. These are digesters that have been operated successfully throughout the country. These are good things. They're not bad things. Now, Mr. Moss may have some specific comments on the digester part. I don't know digesters like he does. I know ethanol plants. You can ask me any questions you want about those. I can do those. And I don't know dairies as much as Mr. Hartman or others. But I do know how to try to keep good relationships with the community. I do know how to keep good relationships with the neighbors. I'm sorry that Mr. Friend believes that Mr. Dwelly lied about what was said to him, but frankly, I was there. I heard the same thing. But I don't think that's the focus here. The focus here is to try to do a good project, to try to clean up the air. Don't we have to start with a good project in order to eventually? Mr. Acevedo said that he services 500 dairies. We may help 4 or 5. Frankly, I think it's going to be less than that. I think it'll be 2 or 3. But the point is, it's a good project. It's a first project. And if we're going to clean up the air around here, let's make the first step. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any comments from my fellow commissioners?
I think that, we're all kind of in agreement about the big picture, and we're a little bit at odds about the small picture. And I think, here we are as a planning commission, and we look at dairies nearly every session. We approve these dairies with overriding environmental considerations, because dairies are bad for the air and dairies are bad for the water. Now, we're saying here that this particular project might, in some sense, have similar impacts. But I think what's happening here is that in order for us to get out of this, pardon the pun, mess we've created with, keeping ag sustainable, we're going to have to take maybe a step back here and there, but then take a couple steps forward. I'm starting to see this project as kind of like that. At the same time, I totally respect the Pixley community in bringing this into a town forum, but yet we have the state standing there with a gun at our head, said if we don't move now, we won't get the money. We can't allow that to jeopardize this project, nor can we ignore the Pixley community. So I think as a small step toward compromising this, I think we have to defer this for at least a couple weeks so that the community can come back to us, and then maybe you can at the same time negotiate with the state and buy some time in terms of getting your grant.
I'll be glad to ask. I think it's statutory for them.
Well, if that's the case, then we have a decision to make maybe July 22nd, or not July 22nd, but their next meeting in June, which is June 22nd. So I don't see how we could, and this is really a complex matter, there's no doubt about it. I don't see how we could not approve this project today. I don't see how we could approve it today. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. And the whole thing, this odor standard, seems to be kind of a stumbling point here. And it makes me think of a funny story with my wife. My wife grew up in Three Rivers. We have cattle, we have horses, but she went down one night to stay with a relative on a dairy in Tulare, and this is the 1970s. She got there, she cried for 2 hours, "Take me home, I can't stand this." They said, "Oh, don't worry, in the morning you won't even notice it." She slept overnight there as a 10-year-old, woke up the next morning, couldn't even smell it. So, we're all over the charts on odor standards. There's no doubt about it. One man's odor is another man that can't notice it. But the point is, we have to do something about this for the future and the sustainability of ag in Tulare County. So, I'd be willing to listen to Ben here on what we can do here, because obviously we can't make the decision right now.
Yeah, and I want to make one thing clear. And one of the residents of Pixley made a comment about this commission was sort of prejudging and not looking out for their best interest. That's not, absolutely not what our role is. Our role is to look out for the public's best interest on land use issues. We're the first place to come for that kind of protection. So we're not here willy-nilly doing frivolous things with applications, particularly with dairies, and especially with projects like this. So I'm not taking offense to that comment, but I'm just pointing out that we're very, very conscientious about looking out for the public's best interest.
Chair, may I speak? After the testimony here and seeing the complexity of this issue right here, I'm not real sure at all that a negative deck is the document that's got to go forward here. And not that I don't think it's a good project. I think it's probably a good project. Maybe somewhere else, or maybe it can be designed to work here. But the problem for the applicant here is that it's just a negative deck. And if this is challenged, all it is one person's opinion. And you're going to have more trouble. I'm telling you to front load your expenses and do it right and get it done. And I know we don't have time, but you know what? You got the wrong document here.
Hey, may I respond?
Yes.
What the Energy Commission has told us is that they have to do a CEQA study, and they have to make a separate determination after hearing from the lead agency, and that they appear willing, and once they've done that, then the award is granted, and it can't be ungranted. We can give back the award because we couldn't do the project, but if you say that as the lead agency, you're unwilling to give this an okay for CEQA, the project does die because the grant goes away. There's no more funding for the project. So just so we're...
May I speak now? I'm taken aback to come here and tell me I've got to make a decision today, otherwise you're going to lose your money in 3 weeks. Now, that kind of bothers me. Now, I'm not going to make a decision today, and I'm not going to press to make it in 2 or 3 days either. We can schedule it on our next meeting, and then we'll discuss it again.
We certainly knew that was a risk when we agreed to the quick time period here with the California Energy Commission. So please, don't misunderstand. This is not an attempt to put pressure on you, sir.
Fine. So, as I said, I don't think this is the right document at this point in time. I don't think there's enough information. We haven't even had time to read what information we have. Maybe there's some other things that can be done. Maybe it can be redesigned. Maybe you could take the manure to Mr. Junio's dairy, mix it in his lagoon. You're going to have a pipeline. Maybe you can pump the slurry into the thing, and you don't have any trucks coming in, and you can cover it. And there's no storage on the slab. It's nothing. It all comes in. It's all contained, and then just send the water back to him. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if you can do something like that or not, but that would solve a lot of problems.
We did look at that, and it wasn't workable. But
it's not workable. Well, then I'm sorry, but I don't know why it wouldn't. But anyway, okay,
Chairman?
I'm through.
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
Can we entertain a motion?
I was about to say, let's put forth a motion, and let me take an attempt at this, and then you can correct me. I think what we're looking at here is option number 4, and Charlotte, if you wouldn't mind stepping forward just so we get this correct. I think option number 4 was to refer the project back to staff for further study and report. I'm going to make that recommendation and be specific in saying that the referral would also include the opportunity for further review by the public to the response made by staff, the public input, and also for the Planning Commission to take further study of the documents and content that were given to us for further review. And I would make a motion to adopt what I just said in option 4 for a date certain, which would be our next meeting, June 25th?
It's actually the 22nd.
27th?
Second.
22nd, June 22nd of 2011 in these chambers.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a point on the record that the public hearing is not closed, it remains tabled.
So heard. I will close the public testimony at this point.
But it could be
Are we going to
reopened.
continue? Right.
Pardon?
We can reopen it.
The public testimony could be reopened.
To be reopened
On the continued date.
on June 22nd, 2011.
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes.
comment
Yes.
real fast? I would encourage some of the people that have made comments today that if you feel like someone has not been notified of this, this would be the time to do it, because there will be no other notifications going out, correct, by the county? Just a point of,
Well, also a mitigated deck, negative deck, could be appropriate, and that could be, save us some time. I like the idea of another agency doing a CEQA review of this project. I don't see why, as long as it's going to occur, to get the funding.
excuse me, but didn't he comment that the CEQA would be done after we approved this
Right.
project?
Well, it'd be a further review by CEQA.
But it would be after we approved this.
I'm not sure I understand how that process works.
Excuse me. You want to make a comment?
Well, I was going to comment on the process.
All right. Then let me reopen public testimony. Let me hear your comment.
Just to be clear, in
Name
terms
and
of the
address.
process, my name is Richard Moss again with Provo and Pritchard Consulting Group, 130 North Garden Street in Visalia.
Thank you.
Just to be clear on the process, the California Energy Commission will be using your determination in this mitigated neg deck in their deliberations. They will either certify the decision that you have made, or they will not.
Yeah.
And that is what is going to be. There will be no additional study unless they decide to do some, and to date, we have no reason to believe they will. They will be relying on your decision and the documents that are produced by Tulare County. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm closing public testimony again.
Well, I'll second that motion if that's still on the table.
That motion is on the table, and I have a second.
For the 22nd.
Gong,
Yes.
Billy's,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
Itliano,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
So moved. We're moving on to item 6, no timed items. Item 7, correspondence and general information. Items for information and discussion only, no action required. Mr. Kimball, no action. Item 8, director's report. 8A, summary of Board of Supervisors meetings, June 1st and 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go for a record and
Oh, that's good.
there were no significant plan items.
That's a record?
Spoke faster, would have been.
As far as an update, just let you know the biggest focus we're working on now is our property review committee and pre-application process. Kind of tandem with what we're doing with the planning commission. We're spending a lot of time in that.
Kind of seems like it's a moving target right now.
Well, there's things that come up as we go that we didn't anticipate. It's not like herding cats, but it's like herding animals. There's some things we can do to work out.
I have a question for you. Over the last few hearings we've had, we've heard residents say, or the city of Tulare, in this case, Pixley, say that they were not noticed. I'm a little concerned with that. Is what's failing in this process for them to get proper notice?
The distance from the
Address a couple of those. In the case with the Pixley one,
back to the files to see when we heard that they
They don't live by the project.
were on the list, we were able to verify. We have an address that we can confirm that they were sent out from our office. Once they're sent out, we have no way to, we don't know exactly how. We don't know exactly.
And I think,
Perhaps there's some instances where more outreach like we would on the general plan, but, you know, we certainly don't have the staff and capability to do that with every single project that comes.
No. I feel totally undressed on this one.
I can't do a full ARR on dairy and get the data. How are we going to get it on this? It's crazy. This doesn't accomplish a thing.
We're required by law to notify them, we do send those notices out, the same with the cities. We don't know internally if the handling with their administrative staff, so.
I like that idea.
What's that?
Pipe it.
They do it
It's
all.
always an issue.
They pump that slurry out of those lagoons all the time.
Never a willing partner.
That guy's
So-
full of.
could I ask Ben?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I would just, first of all, I think it was the chairman that asked if we could get that Pixley plan, if we can get a copy of that North Pixley development plan.
Yeah, I have one of these that has all of our plans and community plans. I'm working on putting that all together to make it available. Remember our toolkit training? This is
Yeah.
a little toolkit.
Yeah. But could we just have before the next meeting, just that one, you know, for sure, get that? I would really like to see it. I think it's in our, isn't it in the general plan book?
No, it's it's an old plan, back in the 80s, but we scanned it.
Okay, and was it adopted by the county? Okay, that's very important. Okay. If we could get a copy of that. My other question, this is just, and you probably don't have an answer to this. There was lots of talk today about smells and odors, and is there a study on noxious odors? And why I say that, and John made such a good point. When you're talking about odors, there's odors and there's odors, and I think we all know that. So when you're talking to, you know, you're talking about an odor and somebody goes, a perfect example is in this report, the odor was considered not to be significant. What is significant
How do they get
in an
that?
odor? How do they, is there a smell or is there a machine that you press the air into it and it measures, or, you know?
Potency and noxiousness is the issue. How potent is it?
How
noxious
noxious is it?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah.
There are some things
to
in
state your name.
the initial study that are quantitative, and there's some things that are qualitative.
Right.
Noise is an example of what's a nuisance noise.
But they can measure noise. There's a machine, they can actually measure noise.
But they don't know what measurement it becomes.
Right.
That depends on the person.
But they can measure it. So in smells, can you measure it?
And the same with odors, when we don't have a threshold, established threshold of significance for odors. We do have thresholds for certain things that
And for planning
air quality issue, you know, noxious gases, things that cause health problems. Those things are part of the odors, and that's what you. As far as the odors that people don't like, we have to make a best guess scenario based on evidence.
Yeah.
You know,
Comment.
Maybe there's a scientific study. We studied 20 different facilities. On an average, 95% of the people didn't like this. We depend on studies like that. But at the end of the day, it's subjective.
Because our internet access.
Okay, anyone else, any comments? So,
Say something if you don't mind.
well, we're still in session here. Excuse me. Excuse me. So, we're done with the Board of Supervisors report?
Yes, other than we're going to be working on some of the technical things. Mike Anderson
Well, if we're on that topic, I'd like to suggest we go back to a parallel process where we get some documentation in the envelopes again, at least for another couple of sessions. And we work on this file transfer issue. I think the most important thing is getting him enough ahead of time. But we were all scrambling in the last 48 hours to see.
Well, this was a huge file.
Yeah,
This was a
yeah.
big file.
So anyway.
It's an important project.
You guys are doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. But it's just, it's hard to do this. Believe me, IT stuff will drive you up the wall, so you just have to be patient with it. But I think for the purposes of us looking like we have our act together with the public, we need to have some documentation, even if it's manual, for another couple of sessions. That's my opinion.
We can do that.
You guys can disagree if you like. Any planning director updates of anything, any kind? Okay. Item 9, any discussion items for future agenda items, no action other than discussion?
For our climate action plan program, we're going to put that off till July, so that's going to be approximately a month from this meeting.
Okay. If there are no other comments, I will move for adjournment. The next meeting to be held here in this chamber, June 22nd, 2011 at 9 a.m. Session's closed.
Now can we hear from TI?
IT.
IT.